Chapter 968. He sank his thoughts into the spirit lock spatial zone and commanded Genius and the wind speed rapid antelope to search together. After some searching, he found that there were quite a few heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls in the spirit lock spatial zone. It was just that there was no fire element in these few. Thus, Lin Yuan asked Genius and the wind speed rapid antelope to continue searching. Moreover, he had already decided that if he really could not find the heavenly maiden elemental pearl that contained the fire-type pearl, Lan Lan Shan, he did not mind waiting for a period of time. When he had gathered 28 pills for each of the 4 elements, he would hand them over to Hu Quan. Since he was going to do it, he would do it to the best of his abilities. Otherwise, not only would Lin Yuan be dissatisfied, but he would also let down the 108 heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls and Hu Quan's craftsmanship. The spirit lock spatial zone had only been upgraded for half a day. However, in the past half a day, due to the increase in the purity and concentration of the spirit energy, the speed at which the elemental shellfish produced the elemental pearls had also greatly increased. Genius used its tiny claws to push away the last pile of heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. Suddenly, a fiery red pearl light entered Lin Yuan's eyes. The moment this fiery red pearl light shone into Lin Yuan's eyes, it was as though a goddess with a high bun flew out of the light and shadow. This fire attribute heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl was bright and blazing, but it also had an indescribable ethereal quality to it. The faintly discernible image of the heavenly lady in the cloud dress gave the entire elemental pearl an extreme feeling. Lin Yuan had never seen this heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl before. It should have appeared after the spirit chi's purity and concentration in the spirit lock spatial zone increased. Coincidentally, this pearl contained a special heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl of the fire attribute. It was a perfect match for the beads. Moreover, this heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl contained a special fire attribute elemental pearl, which could serve as the finishing touch among the other heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls. He immediately took it out of the spirit lock spatial zone. When Hu Quan saw Lin Yuan's serious expression as he circulated his spiritual energy, he knew that he was looking for the resources in his hands. He wanted to see if he could find another heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl. But then, a heavenly maiden grade elemental pearl suddenly appeared in Lin Yuan's hand. Hu Quan couldn't help but cry out involuntarily. Within the elemental pearl, there was a goddess dressed in a high bun that appeared and disappeared. Damn! Is this the legendary Pearl Yun, the heavenly maiden Xian, which is said to be superior to Lan Lan Shan? It shouldn't be. Isn't it said that heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls with a purity of 100%? Lin Yuan, hurry up and tell me what other rare spiritual ingredients you don't have. Lin Yuan smiled upon hearing Hu Quan's words. Instead of answering Hu Quan's question, he changed the topic. Now we have 108 beads. Uncle Hu, what do you think about matching the Tian Nu Xian's beads with the Lan Lan Shan's? Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan immediately slapped his thigh, his eyes flashing. Previously, a whole string of heavenly maiden grade elemental pearls was already an excellent choice when paired together. Now that it's woven into a string of pearls, the feeling of hundreds of waning colors will immediately reach the bottom of my heart. However, the feeling of those 100 kinds of waning colors cannot compare to the feeling of having a heavenly maiden companion behind them. If I have to say the difference, the Lan Lan Shan previously only expressed emotions. Now that the Tian Nu Xian has been added, the entire string of 100 kinds of waning colors has a theme. It's like drawing a painting with a dragon on it, giving the dragon the feeling of coming to life. Lin Yuan nodded and replied, Then I'll have to trouble you, Uncle Hu. Then I'll have to trouble you, Uncle Hu. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan looked at the brocade box in his hand and suddenly felt a little reluctant. Lin Yuan, I can actually weave a bead for you now. According to the weaving method just now, I'll be able to weave it before dawn tomorrow. However, this kind of weaving method is really not worthy of the 108 peerless treasures you gave me. I plan to complete the general design and construction of the underground space at hand. Then I'll get my little fellows to complete the construction according to my requirements. I'll also enter seclusion and use my strongest spirit craftsman's strength to complete the weaving of this string of beads without any distractions. This string of beads is very likely to be the most precious thing I'll weave in my life." Upon hearing Hu Quan's words, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows slightly. He knew that Hu Quan now had the same feeling when he had created the red sandalwood longevity fish tank. Lin Yuan naturally would not object to Hu Quan's decision to enter seclusion. However, he felt that there was something wrong with what Hu Quan had said. "Uncle Hu, there will never be a time when good things like us reach their peak. I believe that both the rare spiritual ingredients and Uncle Hu's spirit craftsmanship will definitely be able to reach a higher level." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan laughed out loud. When he had been a Class 4 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan had always thought that Class 5 spirit craftsmen were the peak of spirit craftsmen. However, when he really became a Class 5 spirit craftsman, Hu Quan knew how big the gap between them was. Take Hu Quan for example. He was a newly advanced Class 5 spirit craftsman. No matter how talented he was, he definitely could not compare to those old fellows who had been Class 5 spirit craftsmen for decades in terms of craftsmanship and ability. At the Class 5 spirit craftsman level, Hu Quan began to slowly slack off. Anyway, Class 5 was already the peak. Even if there was a gap in strength between Class 5 spirit craftsmen, he was still at the peak of spirit craftsmen. However, after listening to Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan felt that his previous thoughts had fallen into the wrong direction. As a spirit craftsman who spoke with skills, how could he not have the heart to improve? Hu Quan, who suddenly understood, looked at the 107 Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls in the brocade box again, as well as the Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearl that was at the top of all the other Heavenly Maiden Grade Elemental Pearls. He felt that many thoughts had appeared in his mind. Hu Quan felt that he should go to Master Hong Shen and ask him to help him improve his wood-weaving house centipede. At that time, he could try the weaving method that he had not been able to do before. After Hu Quan calmed down, he said to Lin Yuan, how is this asking for my help? Lin Yuan, how are you asking for my help? You're clearly doing me a great favor. The first thing is over. What's the second thing you want to talk about? Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan asked Hu Quan. Uncle Hu, have you heard of the swamp world? Hu Quan was slightly startled and immediately replied, I've definitely heard of the swamp world. I've definitely heard of the swamp world. Could it be that the second favor you asked me for is related to the swamp world? Lin Yuan nodded in response. Uncle Hu, the thing I'm looking for your help is indeed related to the swamp world. I want to borrow some spirit craftsmen from you who can take charge. The second thing was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 969. Lin Yuan wanted to get some spirit craftsmen from Hu Quan who could stand on their own. Then, he used the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach to bring these people into the swamp world. The land in the 3 mountains was constructed. Lin Yuan was able to ensure that these people did not know about the Spirit Lock spatial zone's existence after being stored in the golden toad's stomach and skin artifact. But in the swamp world, anyone with the slightest bit of intelligence would be able to guess where they were, and there was no way to hide it. When Hu Quan heard that it involved the swamp world, he knew that this matter should be of great importance. Hu Quan didn't ask much and immediately said, there are more than 500 spirit craftsmen in the Heavenly Craft Pavilion now. Most of these spirit craftsmen are Class 3 spirit craftsmen and can hold their own. I'll have a meeting with these bastards tomorrow during the day. I just don't know if young master has any other requirements for these little bastards other than being able to take charge on their own. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan pondered slightly. Lin Yuan did not have a rigid requirement. His purpose of borrowing spirit craftsmen from Hu Quan was to let them complete their own jobs and carry out construction and creation. However, these Class 3 spirit craftsmen had to work in the swamp world. Without the restrictions of the contract, the hearts of men could not be separated from the belly, and the swamp world was a matter of great importance. Not even the slightest hint of it could be leaked. Therefore, he did not intend to release these spirit craftsmen who had entered the swamp world to work in a short time. However, Lin Yuan would not compensate these spirit craftsmen for sacrificing their freedom. Uncle Hu, I only have one request for these spirit craftsmen apart from being independent. You have to be able to endure loneliness and avoid the world. Upon hearing that, Hu Quan frowned slightly. At that moment, Hu Quan heard Lin Yuan continue. Therefore, it's best for Uncle Hu to choose a spirit craftsman who doesn't have parents, wife, or children. Of course, as the price for avoiding the world, I can provide these spirit craftsmen with all the bronze/epic phase they need to contract for life. In addition, all the daily necessities will be distributed according to a higher standard. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Hu Quan roughly knew Lin Yuan's purpose and plan. However, Hu Quan felt that given Lin Yuan's conditions, even those spirit craftsmen who had parents, wives, and children in the real world would find it hard to refuse. Even if a Class 4 spirit craftsman worked hard and used his entire life savings, it would be very difficult to find a creation master to customize a few bronze/epic phase. It could be said that Lin Yuan's promise was equivalent to giving these spirit craftsmen a lifetime guarantee. Normally, when spirit craftsmen were hired, they would receive different salaries and treatments according to their ranks. In addition to the bronze/epic phase provided by Lin Yuan, these spirit craftsmen who were asked to live in seclusion would also receive a higher treatment. In other words, as long as a Class 3 spirit craftsman worked for Lin Yuan in seclusion, he would receive the salary of a Class 4 spirit craftsman every day. If a Class 4 spirit craftsman worked for him, he would receive the salary of a Class 5 spirit craftsman every day. Such a salary would allow the spirit craftsmen who secluded themselves from the world to work for Lin Yuan to accumulate massive wealth. At that thought, Hu Quan asked Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan, do these spirit craftsmen need to live in seclusion forever? Lin Yuan pondered for a moment and shook his head. It should take at least 10 years to hide from the world. After 10 years, there is no need to hide from the world anymore. 10 years was enough for him to grow and develop in the swamp world. Therefore, 10 years of seclusion would be enough to achieve his goal. Moreover, he believed that these spirit craftsmen who had entered the swamp world to work for him would be extremely loyal to him during these 10 years. Upon hearing that, Hu Quan felt that he wanted to sign up. 10 years of seclusion in exchange for a lifetime supply of epic phase was like a meat pie falling from the sky. In the era of the revival of spirit energy, human beings had become long-lived. 10 years was nothing in one's entire life. Lin Yuan, isn't the reward too high for 10 years of seclusion? With such conditions, I think anyone who isn't stupid would choose to participate. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied to Hu Quan. Uncle Hu, I want to take advantage of this seclusion to nurture a batch of phase for Sky City and the Heavenly Craft Pavilion and equip them with top-notch spirit craftsmen. The most important thing about these spirit craftsmen is absolute loyalty. Therefore, Uncle Hu doesn't need to mention 10 years of seclusion. Hu Quan understood Lin Yuan's intention and thought to himself. I wonder which little bastard will be able to obtain such a great opportunity in tomorrow's meeting. After discussing with Hu Quan, Lin Yuan returned to his room. Upon returning to his room, Lin Yuan found that Chimey had turned into a fae and was lying in the middle of his big bed with its limbs spread out. It didn't look like it was sleeping at all. Lin Yuan gently carried Chimey and placed it on the pillow. Then, he summoned Genius, who was dozing off in the spirit lock spatial zone. He lifted the blanket and gently covered Genius and Chimey. Looking at the faintly brightening sky, Lin Yuan simply logged into the star web. He began to prepare to purchase venomous snake species phase for Wendy. Lin Yuan headed straight for the rare life form pavilion and started to sweep up the snake phase that were being auctioned. Lin Yuan only adhered to two principles when it came to sweeping up the snake phase. One principle was to be venomous, and the other principle was to be good-looking. Each of these snake phase had to be fused by Wendy, and the fused venomous snakes would become a strand of Wendy's snake hair. Therefore, Lin Yuan didn't want the cute Wendy's snake hair to be so ugly. There were plenty of snake phase in the Star Web's rare life form pavilion, and Lin Yuan quickly swept up over a dozen. After sweeping up the snake phase, Lin Yuan logged out of the Star Web and leaned against the side of the bed. He wrapped his arms around Chimey and Genius to take a nap. Lin Yuan still had to wait until the next morning before entering the swamp world with endless summer. He was going to plant the sacred source life form, the Arakawa orchid, in the area marked by the ethereal jellyfish's tentacle. At the same time, he was going to prepare some high-grade phase essence blood and scatter it into the swamp. He was going to attract the swamp crocodiles for the Medusa snake demon to control. Bang! 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 The rhythmic sounds of percussion rang out in an unusually luxurious study room. Every piece of furniture in this study room exuded the dignity of a rich and powerful family, which was low-key and not ostentatious. Upon hearing the rhythmic sounds, a dispirited woman couldn't help but say, "Dad, stop hitting. Zhuo's soul has already been severely injured and hasn't recovered. If you continue to hit, Zhuo will die." Upon hearing the woman's words, the tall elder with white hair and a white beard that reached his chest swung the vase even faster. He looked like he was going to beat Zhuo to death. At the same time, the tall elder with white hair and a white beard that reached his chest turned around and glared at the dispirited woman. He scolded, "Who was the one who confidently said that he and the bamboo monarch had a chance? And who gave you the guts to imitate the bamboo monarch's crown pattern?" Upon hearing the elder's words, Miao Qi's dispirited face suddenly turned ice cold. He frowned and looked at the elder. "Dad, no one knows better than you what I'm wearing to the Nix assembly and why I'm here. Don't forget that you were the one who appointed me to represent the Miao family's beast creation garden to attend the Nix conference. I'm responsible for what happened, but I can't bear all the responsibility." Chapter 3 Sad Face. End of this chapter. Chapter 970. While speaking, Miao Qi's face revealed a cold expression as he looked at the tall elder with white hair and beard that reached his chest. At that moment, Miao Qi's words did not contain the respect he should have for his father, who was the current head of the beast creation garden. Upon hearing Miao Qi's words, the tall elder let out a cold snort, but he did not say anything else. The vase in his hand rose and fell even faster as it ruthlessly smashed towards Miao Zhuo's body. Miao Zhuo's forehead was dripping with cold sweat, and his body was trembling in pain, but he did not dare to use his hands to block. He was afraid that using his hands to block would infuriate the elder and result in an even more violent beating. As a pinnacle Class 4 creation master, Miao Qi was a true core member of the Beast Creation Garden. Even if Miao Qi was the elder's daughter and the current head of the Beast Creation Garden, he still had to consider Miao Qi's feelings. Seeing that the elder was hitting Miao Zhuo with even more force, Miao Qi could not bear to watch any longer. "Dad, even if Zhuo's soul spirit was severely injured, he is still a pinnacle Class 3 creation master. A young pinnacle Class 3 creation master is the family's wealth. Are you going to beat him to death just like that? Now that it's happened, you've already vented your anger. You should think about how to remedy the situation and not keep venting your anger on Miao Zhuo." When talking about remedy, the domineering Miao Qi's voice had a slight tremble. Although Miao Qi and Miao Zhuo had been chased out of the Nix assembly, the elder group of the Miao family still heard about what had happened during the Nix assembly. Miao Qi had naturally heard about it too. Miao Qi did not expect Wang Fuxiang's misfortune physique to have such a severe impact on the Class 5 creation master, Bamboo Monarch. Back in Night Glory Palace, Miao Qi had been extremely weak in front of Wang Fuxiang. This was because Miao Qi did not have the capital to be domineering. Miao Qi knew that Bamboo Monarch liked Wang Fuxiang. Even so, Miao Qi still dared to talk back to Wang Fuxiang when facing Miao Zhuo. He wanted to dig a hole for Wang Fuxiang. However, when Bamboo Monarch's disciple, Xia Chen, personally acknowledged Wang Fuxiang's status, Miao Qi did not dare to say anything. Miao Qi's confrontation with Wang Fuxiang in Yeyang Palace and his expulsion from Yeyang Palace could be considered the greatest humiliation of his life. This caused Miao Qi to lose face in front of so many veteran and peak forces leaders. He was afraid that even the juniors of the various families knew about this matter, and he had become the laughing stock of others during their leisure time. How could Miao Qi not hate him? Miao Qi hoped that Bamboo Monarch's condition would worsen. As long as the bamboo monarch's condition worsened, Wang Fuxiang, who had affected the bamboo monarch, would definitely die. Miao Qi dared to openly pursue Bamboo Monarch because she had once researched a topic under Bamboo Monarch and helped him a little. The Bamboo Monarch had always been a gentle person. As long as he and the Miao family did not provoke Wang Fuxiang in the future, the Bamboo Monarch would not dare to provoke her. The Bamboo Monarch probably wouldn't do anything to the Miao family in the open. At most, Wang Fuxiang would use the Bamboo Monarch's name to suppress the Miao family. The Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's function was in terms of Creation Masters. Even if the Creation Masters' functions were suppressed, it wouldn't affect them much. Therefore, apart from some humiliation, the confrontation between Miao Qi and Wang Fuxiang wouldn't have much of an impact. However, he didn't expect Zhuo to find trouble with Sun Ningxiang out of nowhere. It was fine if he went to find trouble with Sun Ningxiang, but it was common when the juniors of the various aristocratic families gathered together. As long as the consequences weren't too severe, the major factions wouldn't be too concerned. However, Miao Qi had never expected that Miao Zhuo would actually be so disrespectful to the Moon Empress disciple and point at her nose. At the same time, he had caused the chief guard's disciple to be annoyed. Because of Miao Zhuo's actions, the Du family's Hearthstone medals and the Feng family's Four-Legged Beast Regent's collaboration with the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden was cancelled. It was said that after the Du family's Hearthstone medals and the Feng family's Four-Legged Beast Regent cancelled their collaboration with the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden, they immediately went to the Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley. The Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley and the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden had always been enemies. Moreover, the Long family's Coiled Dragon Valley had always suppressed the Beast Creation Garden. The Miao family had been chasing after the Coiled Dragon Valley's footsteps for so many years and had even set their sights on the Du Immortal Nursery, which was also a top-notch faction. Under such circumstances, because of Miao Zhuo's rash actions, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's newly established ally was handed over to the Coiled Dragon Valley. On one hand, it was equivalent to weakening the Miao family's current connections in the Beast Creation Garden. On the other hand, it also increased the Long family's connections in the Coiled Dragon Valley. At the thought of this, Miao Qi would have kicked Miao Zhuo a few times if he hadn't seen Miao Zhuo covered in wounds. Rumor had it that the Miao family's elder council was very concerned about the golden lotus stalk, which was in the hands of the Moon Empress. At the critical juncture when the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden was preparing to visit the Moon Empress and see if they could ask for a golden lotus stalk, Miao Zhuo being disrespectful to the Moon Empress disciple was equivalent to being disrespectful to the Radiant Moon Palace. Under such circumstances, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden didn't dare to go to the Leaning Moon Mountain to ask for the golden lotus stalk. Given the Moon Empress' temper, she might even suppress the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden in the future. At that moment, Miao Qi heard his father, Miao Zhinshan, say, "Remedy." How? The elder council discussed for an entire afternoon and couldn't think of a remedy. Even if they thought of a remedy, who would dare to go to the Leaning Moon Mountain? All the top-notch factions are watching the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden's show now. Even the top-notch factions that are allies of the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden are clearly distancing themselves today. If this matter isn't resolved perfectly, I'm afraid the future cooperation will be affected. By then, the worst-case scenario would be to break off the cooperation. Even if the situation is better and we keep breaking off the cooperation, the Miao family's Beast Creation Garden will still be in a weak position. This is all because of this little bastard. Miao Zhinshan's words made Miao Qi speechless. Miao Qi didn't know how to refute Miao Zhuo's divine manipulation. At that moment, Zheng Kaiyuan, who was standing in the house, had an idea. He stepped forward and said, "Grandpa, Master, I might have a solution for this matter." Seeing Zheng Kaiyuan suddenly speak, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi frowned and wanted to reprimand him. However, when they thought about the contents of the Elder Council's investigation of the Nix Assembly, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi didn't reprimand him. However, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi didn't take Zheng Kaiyuan's words seriously. The whole Miao family was in a terrible predicament because of this matter. As a junior, what solution could Zheng Kaiyuan have? The first one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 971. Both of them had watched Jin Kaiyuan grow up, and Jin Kaiyuan was indeed outstanding as a creation master. Otherwise, Miao Qi wouldn't have accepted him as a disciple and nurtured him. Even so, Jin Kaiyuan wasn't qualified to stand in the circle of Her Majesty's disciples. As a veteran faction, the Zheng family wasn't qualified to attend a grand event like the Nix conference. Zheng Kaiyuan was only able to attend the Nix conference because of Miao Ji. It could be said that Zheng Kaiyuan didn't even know who Her Majesty's disciple was. Therefore, even if Zheng Kaiyuan didn't know the reason why he was standing with Her Majesty's disciple, it didn't mean anything. However, Miao Zhinshan, who couldn't think of a solution, still asked Zheng Kaiyuan. Kaiyuan, do you have a solution? Zheng Kaiyuan stepped forward and puffed out his chest. Whoever started the trouble should end it. Since this matter happened to the Moon Empress disciple, Lin Yuan, it was Miao Zhuo who offended Lord Lin Yuan. As long as Miao Zhuo can obtain Lord Lin Yuan's forgiveness, the Moon Empress probably won't look into this matter. Lord Lin Yuan wore the moonlight regalia that competed with the Moon Empress during the Nix conference. It shows how much the Moon Empress values Lord Lin Yuan. The golden lotus brocade that appeared at the royal capital's Fey Observer Guild was also taken out by Lord Lin Yuan. This means that Lord Lin Yuan definitely has something like the golden lotus brocade. If we can build a good relationship with Lord Lin Yuan, it shouldn't be difficult to obtain the golden lotus brocade. Hearing Zheng Kaiyuan's boasting, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi revealed contemplative expressions. They seemed to be considering the feasibility of Zheng Kaiyuan's solution. Miao Zhuo, who was beaten up, glared at Zheng Kaiyuan with malicious eyes. As a core member of the younger generation of the elite faction, Beast Creation Garden, Miao Zhuo was very proficient in the art of speech. Zheng Kaiyuan had already summarized the entire matter when he said that whoever started the trouble should end it. However, in such a situation, Zheng Kaiyuan still had to mention that he offended Lin Yuan. Zheng Kaiyuan didn't have to say it, but saying it now was the same as stepping on him. Miao Zhuo believed that he had been taking good care of his cousin, Zheng Kaiyuan. Now that he was in such a miserable state, there was basically no possibility of him making a comeback. Under such circumstances, why was Zheng Kaiyuan still trying to step on him? It could be said that Zheng Kaiyuan had poured cold water on Miao Zhuo when he was in dire straits. Miao Zhuo sneered in his heart. No matter what, his surname was Miao, and Zheng Kaiyuan's surname was Zheng. Even if he made a mistake, there was no possibility of turning things around. After all, he was still a direct descendant of the younger generation of the Miao family. If he wanted to make a move on Zheng Kaiyuan, he could do it without anyone knowing. At this moment, Miao Zhuo saw Zheng Kaiyuan take 2 steps forward and stand beside him. During this time, Miao Zhuo also saw Zheng Kaiyuan turn his head and glance at him. At this moment, Miao Zhuo felt that Zheng Kaiyuan was looking at him as if he was looking at a servant. Grandpa, Master, before going to the Nix assembly, Mother told me to make more friends, and I'm very good at making friends. When I was standing with Lord Lin Yuan, I even left Lord Lin Yuan's phone number. Upon hearing Zheng Kaiyuan's words, Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi were both surprised and pleasantly surprised. They looked at Zheng Kaiyuan and felt that it was their first time meeting him. Miao Zhinshan personally walked in front of Zheng Kaiyuan and placed his hand on Zheng Kaiyuan's shoulder. Grandson, don't be in a hurry to return to Indigo Azure City's Zheng family for the next few days. I'll ask someone to bring Xiaoji over. Give me the Moon Empress disciple's phone number first. The Elders' Council will discuss and decide how to contact the Moon Empress disciple. If you have time these 2 days, you might as well walk around with the Moon Empress disciple. If you need anything while walking around, you can choose from the gifts in the Beast Creation Garden's treasury. Miao Zhuo had never expected that Zheng Kaiyuan would have the Moon Empress disciple's phone number. If that was really the case, then he really could not do anything to Zheng Kaiyuan. In fact, he would even have to rely on Zheng Kaiyuan to live in the future. At this thought, Miao Zhuo's mood immediately became complicated. He could not understand what Zheng Kaiyuan had done to get Lin Yuan's phone number after he had been chased out of the outer palace. Compared to Miao Zhuo's complicated mood, Zheng Kaiyuan was also very agitated. In Zheng Kaiyuan's impression, his grandfather usually addressed him as Kaiyuan, the person closest to him. He had never called him his grandson. Furthermore, ever since his mother, Miao Zhi, had married into the Zheng family, his grandfather had always been unhappy. He had not allowed his mother to return to the Zheng family for many years. Even during the new year, when his mother called his grandfather to greet him, no one would pick up the phone even after the call ended. He did not expect that his grandfather would actually allow his mother to return to the Miao family. This was equivalent to fulfilling his mother's wish for many years. His grandfather's change in attitude toward him was one thing. At the same time, his grandfather allowed him to take any gift from the Beast Creation Garden's treasury. Any gift that was qualified to be placed in the Beast Creation Garden's treasury was worth 1,000 taels of gold. Any random item in the Beast Creation Garden's treasury was something that he would never be able to come into contact with in the Zheng family. Since he was given the right to take any gift from the Beast Creation Garden's treasury, then even if he did not interact with Lin Yuan, he just needed to find an excuse to take any resources. In Zheng Kaiyuan's heart, these tangible benefits were much more important than Miao Zhinshan's attitude toward him. Originally, Zheng Kaiyuan already had ambitions in his heart during the Great Nix Assembly. At that moment, Zheng Kaiyuan suddenly had a feeling that the entire Miao family had to rely on him. When Zheng Kaiyuan looked at Miao Zhuo and even his master, Miao Qi, he could not help but feel that they were not worthy of his attention. However, even if Zheng Kaiyuan had the guts, he wouldn't dare to interact with Lin Yuan more often. This was because Zheng Kaiyuan had never contacted Lin Yuan in private. But no matter what, Lin Yuan was the one who had contacted him, so there was no mistake. When Zheng Kaiyuan thought of his current treatment, he could not help but feel grateful to Lin Yuan from the bottom of his heart. Zheng Kaiyuan also had a small plan in his heart. "Grandfather, I'll leave everything to you. If you need my help, I'm always willing to help. According to my observation, Lord Lin Yuan's temper is not good. Therefore, you must show your sincerity when preparing gifts." Zheng Kaiyuan knew that he was being valued so much now because of Lin Yuan's phone number. Chapter 972. Therefore, Zheng Kaiyuan knew how to package himself. In his grandfather's eyes, the more familiar he was with Lin Yuan and the better his relationship with Lin Yuan, the more benefits he could obtain. Only by bad-mouthing Lin Yuan's temper would his grandfather take out more sincerity from the treasury. By then, he might even be able to take a few items from this large amount of sincerity without anyone noticing. In the next hour, Zheng Kaiyuan felt that he had reached the peak of his life. During this hour, Zheng Kaiyuan constantly received praise from Miao Zhinshan and Miao Qi. It made Zheng Kaiyuan feel that he was the Miao family's young master. Meanwhile, Miao Zhuo was like his dog, so pitiful and helpless. An hour later, Zheng Kaiyuan straightened his back and left Miao Zhinshan's study. Miao Zhuo used both hands to cover the injuries caused by the vase and limped behind Zheng Kaiyuan. He looked a little down and out. Miao Zhuo walked quickly with a complicated expression and walked to Zheng Kaiyuan's side. "Cousin, I don't know." Before Miao Zhuo could finish speaking, he saw Zheng Kaiyuan take a step toward him. He hit the wound on his shoulder and said arrogantly, "Don't call me cousin. Don't call me cousin, just call me by my name. Miao Zhuo, after you offended Lord Lin Yuan and were chased out of Yeyang Palace, Lord Lin Yuan told me that he wanted to settle the score with you. I said a few words on your behalf before Lord Lin Yuan let it go. Tell me, what are you going to give me back?" Miao Zhuo's expression became increasingly complicated when he heard Zheng Kaiyuan's words. Miao Zhuo remembered that when Zheng Kaiyuan had just arrived from the Zheng family and learned creation master knowledge from his aunt, he had been very sweet to him. Zheng Kaiyuan would be full of smiles when he replied to him as cousin. But now, the world had changed, and it was as though he had committed a huge mistake by calling him cousin. Miao Zhuo was not a fool. When he had met Lin Yuan in a hurry at the Nix assembly, he knew that Lin Yuan was a good-tempered person. Otherwise, the one who had attacked him would not have been Chief Guard Ye's disciple but Lin Yuan. As the Moon Empress disciple, Lin Yuan did not settle the score with him in person, so he certainly would not have the leisure to settle the score with him later. Therefore, Zheng Kaiyuan's words about Lin Yuan's bad temper were all lies. However, at this time, Miao Zhuo did not have the ability or qualifications to expose Zheng Kaiyuan. Miao Zhuo took a deep breath. Kaiyuan, how do you want me to repay you? Zheng Kaiyuan snorted when he heard that. Miao Zhuo, I heard that Elder Lu, who is always by your side to protect you, has reached the peak of the Emperor stage. My two fays have reached the pinnacle of Myth 3. I wonder if cousin can lend me Elder Lu. Miao Zhuo's expression froze when he heard Zheng Kaiyuan's words. His eyes were fixed on Zheng Kaiyuan, but his tone was still gentle. What does Kaiyuan want to see Elder Lu for? Elder Lu hasn't fought for a year. Currently, Elder Lu is accumulating his foundation and preparing to let one of his fays get involved in the world creation tribulation. Miao Zhuo thought that his refusal was very clear, but he didn't expect Zheng Kaiyuan to continue as if he didn't hear his refusal. Since it's not convenient for Elder Lu to make a move, Miao Zhuo, lend me the other 4 Emperor-class experts under you. Elder Lu won't have to make a move then. He just needs to hold the line. That's right. I remember that you seem to have an opinion about Sky City, Miao Zhuo. I'm borrowing Elder Lu from you this time because I want to uproot the entire Sky City by attacking the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce. You won't refuse me to go against Sky City, right? But if you have to refuse, I can only look for Grandpa and see if he can help me put in a good word. I think if Grandpa asks, Miao Zhuo, you won't refuse me again, right? Miao Zhuo didn't expect Zheng Kaiyuan's words to have him in the bag. Zheng Kaiyuan's words made it impossible for Miao Zhuo to refuse. Miao Zhuo said with a tense expression. Kaiyuan, you can make your own decision on this matter. Everyone in the Miao family knows about my current situation, and I don't have the face to command these Emperor-class experts under me. Therefore, Kaiyuan, you might as well tell Grandpa about this matter. You might even be able to borrow more manpower. If Grandpa agrees, won't my subordinates be at your disposal? After saying that, Miao Zhuo turned around and limped forward. His back view looked extremely bleak. Zheng Kaiyuan looked at Miao Zhuo's back view and said in disdain, ignorant. You don't know what's good for you. Then, Zheng Kaiyuan turned around and walked toward the study room again. In the next few days, Zheng Kaiyuan was preparing to use the Miao family's power to uproot the entire Sky City. Otherwise, Nightmare VI's death would always be hanging over Zheng Kaiyuan's head like a sharp sword. It made Zheng Kaiyuan feel that someone was spying on him from behind, and he couldn't eat or sleep in peace. Inside the Return from Faraway Manor's master bedroom, Lin Yuan realized that it was already past 8:00 when he woke up. Genius and Chimey, which had been obediently staying in his arms last night, had already burrowed into his silk pajamas. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. In order not to wake Chimey and Genius, he simply unbuttoned his pajamas and gently took them off. Then, he changed into waterproof spirit chi clothes and shoes before walking out of the room. After walking out of the room, he saw Lu Pinru and Wenyu flipping through the blueprints on the second floor's attic. The blueprints were all kinds of clothing designs for Lu Pinru and Wenyu. He found that Wenyu and Lu Pinru's clothing designs were very similar, and they were both relatively simple. At that moment, Wenyu said, "We want to mass-produce these spirit chi clothes. We want to mass-produce these spiritual chi clothes. In order to control the quality of the spiritual chi clothes, we can buy a few clothing factories. We can also arrange for Class 2 weavers in every position in these clothing factories. However, if we want to make a name for ourselves, it's not enough to rely on these ordinary spirit chi clothes. Therefore, I think we should launch the advanced customization business. In this regard, I plan to hire a Class 5 weaver who is good at tailoring clothes and a Class 5 weaver who is good at drawing. Let these two Class 5 weavers be in charge of the advanced customization business." Upon hearing Wenyu's words, Lu Pinru had a face of admiration. She was very good at designing and producing spirit chi clothes. However, when it came to managing a brand, Lu Pinru felt that she was far inferior to Wenyu. Although Wen Yu was good at resource allocation, she was actually not that cunning when it came to managing a brand. Wen Yu had learned so many ideas from Lin Yuan's private territory management. Lin Yuan did not disturb Wen Yu and Lu Pinru. Instead, he went downstairs to the living room and sat beside Endless Summer. When Endless Summer saw Lin Yuan go downstairs, she asked with anticipation, "Lin Yuan, when are we going to the place you mentioned?" "Lin Yuan, when are we going to the place you mentioned?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan took out his cell phone and replied, "Lin Yuan, when are we going to the place you mentioned?" After saying that, Lin Yuan took out his cell phone and replied, "I asked Listen to come over to deliver something. When it arrives, we'll set off." After thinking about it, Lin Yuan decided to ask Listen to prepare some carrion-eating phase essence blood. Since carrion-eating phase fed on decaying things, their blood had a strong resistance to carrion-eating fungi. Using these carrion-eating phase essence blood, Lin Yuan could attract enough marsh crocodiles at once. After getting dozens of buckets of the tunnel rat's essence blood from Listen, Lin Yuan let Endless Summer enter the artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac. Then, Lin Yuan entered the spirit lock spatial zone with the artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and skin. When he entered the swamp world through the Klein hub, Lin Yuan found that the originally calm swamp world had changed. Looking at the lizard Teng, who had 4 broken heads and was seriously injured on the ground, as well as the scaled concubine and Wendy, whose fate was unknown, Lin Yuan's anger suddenly surged. Feeling the violent energy fluctuations above his head, Lin Yuan looked up at the sky. He saw the predator butterfly in a confrontation with a strange-looking dimensional creature. 3rd. End of this chapter. Chapter 973. Lin Yuan saw that this strange dimensional life form was not big and was only the size of a human head. However, the pressure emitted by this strange swamp dimensional creature the size of a human head was enough to match the slaughtering butterfly. The slaughter sky butterfly was already a Suzerain X first creation tribulation Fae. It had yet to successfully advance from Suzerain Class 10 to Monarch Class 1. However, the killer butterfly was one of the 3 supreme bloodlines of butterfly species Faes and grasped the power world transformed from the power law. The power world, which was a pure offensive law world, allowed the killer butterfly to have the capital to fight even Monarch Class 1 creation lineage Faes. The pressure emitted by the strange swamp dimensional creature the size of a human head was comparable to the predator butterfly. This meant that the swamp dimensional creature's strength was about the same as the predator butterfly's. It might even be a bit stronger than the killer butterfly. Otherwise, Shiteng, Wendy, and the Class 6 Medusa would not be in such a situation where their lives were uncertain under the killer butterfly's protection. Lin Yuan did not know the state of the Class 6 Medusa and Shiteng. However, based on his spiritual energy connection with Wendy, Lin Yuan could be sure that she was still alive. This could be considered a blessing in misfortune. If Wendy died, then Lin Yuan's spiritual energy would be damaged, and the damaged spiritual energy would cause him to suffer from headaches for a long time. It would also affect the use of other Faes. Moreover, the loss of spiritual energy due to the death of a Fae could not be recovered. This would undoubtedly make Lin Yuan's spiritual energy, which he could not control too much, enter a state of one disaster after another. The killer butterfly was now a Suzerain Class 10 creation tribulation, and its strength was comparable to a Class 10 dimensional life form. This strange dimensional life form the size of a human head could faintly suppress the killer butterfly, indicating that its strength should be around Class 11. Lin Yuan looked at the ferocious strange bird with sarcomas on its head and body. The sarcomas were covered with fine snake scales, and a few feathers were faintly growing on the snake scales. Lin Yuan used Morbius True Data to check this strange bird. Alien beast name, drinking venom snake vulture, life form, dimensional life form, blessed believer, alien beast rank, class 11, totem belief, remnant body exquisite totem innate skills frowny face poison congealing heart, while devouring poisonous substances to increase one's strength, one can condense the devoured poison in one's heart and modify the heart. 4 types of poisonous blood with different effects will be condensed in 2 atriums and 2 ventricles. At the same time, when he swallowed the Medusa monster's hair, he could use a special protein in the Medusa monster's hair to increase his heart's capacity for venom and assimilate the venom in the heart into the Medusa monster's hair that had a petrifying effect. Upon seeing the attributes of the swamp-dimensional life form, Lin Yuan's expression turned even gloomier. He never expected that he had guessed correctly. This water-drinking snake vulture was really a Class 11-dimensional creature. A Class 11-dimensional life form's strength was already vaguely equivalent to a creation I-Fey. Such strength was beyond the scope of a Class 5-dimensional rift. Even a Class 5-dimensional rift would at most have Class 10-dimensional life forms. Furthermore, this water-drinking snake vulture wasn't just a simple dimensional creature. It was also a believer of an apostle. Its totem was the remnant body exquisite totem. At the same time, the water-drinking snake vulture's innate skill, poison-congealing heart, determined that it was a dimensional life form that used poison as its main attack method. Such dimensional life forms were the most difficult to deal with. As long as one's body absorbed a trace of poison, it would be severely affected. As a result, its combat strength would be greatly weakened. Upon seeing that the butchering sky butterfly's milky blue wings were a little dim, Lin Yuan knew that the butchering sky butterfly had used a lot of the scale powder on its wings to resist the poison of the water-drinking snake vulture. The scale powder had always been very important to butterfly species phase. The scale powder wasn't just a means of control and attack for butterfly species phase, but it could also increase their flying speed. The creation breed butchering sky butterfly was considered a Fey that excelled in speed. After losing the scale powder, the butchering sky butterfly's speed would slow down. It would be more vulnerable to the Class 11-dimensional creature, the water-drinking snake vulture. Just as Lin Yuan took out the artifact made from the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach pouch and was about to release the Class 1 creation I monarch, Endless Summer, the Class 11-dimensional creature, the water-drinking snake vulture, used an abnormally sharp voice to speak in the swamp world's language. I originally wanted to eat the hair of the Medusa demon that had been luring the swamp crocodiles at the edge of the swamp. I didn't expect to have such a great harvest. Little butterfly, you can't stop me. Don't think that you can protect the safety of those two apostles. I just didn't kill them. Otherwise, these two apostles would have turned into a pile of bones under my poison. These two apostles must be mine. I'm going to take them back and offer them to Lady Ling Long. While speaking, the water-drinking snake vulture flapped its wings and waved out four-colored poisonous gases. These four-colored poisonous gases formed four 300 feet long giant snakes in the air and crashed toward the butchering sky butterfly. The butchering sky butterfly hurriedly turned into milky blue butterfly shadows that filled the sky, but the four 300 feet long giant snakes also split into millions of small snakes. The four-colored small snakes attacked the milky blue butterfly shadows together. Finally, in bursts of milky blue scale powder, these millions of four-colored small snakes disappeared. At that moment, the halo on the wings of the scourge sky butterfly that was flying in the sky became even dimmer. However, the butchering sky butterfly had already discovered Lin Yuan's arrival. Lin Yuan's arrival made the butchering sky butterfly heave a long sigh of relief. The butchering sky butterfly had not used the nomological world's power to defend until now. It also did not use the nomological world's power to attack the water-drinking snake vulture. Although phase and dimensional lifeforms had roughly the same strength at a certain level, the abilities they used were completely different. The butchering sky butterfly's strength was slightly lower than that of the water-drinking snake vulture. Therefore, after using the power world, the butchering sky butterfly was neither confident in keeping the water-drinking snake vulture nor preventing it from escaping. Once the water-drinking snake vulture escaped, the next time it came, the apostles it believed in would even descend. In that case, the foundation that Lin Yuan had just established in the swamp world would be destroyed. The butchering sky butterfly flew in front of Lin Yuan in a flash and asked him in the main world's language. Lin Yuan, what should I do next? Even if I release the power of the power world and use the exclusive skill, Realm Force Field, that I obtained when I became a creation breed, I can at most suppress the water-drinking snake vulture for a period of time or cause it to inadvertently suffer some minor injuries. Actually, this water-drinking snake vulture must still be hiding something because I feel that there's a power that's comparable to mine hidden under this land. The first one was even more powerful. End of this chapter. Chapter 974. Lin Yuan's pupils constricted, and he subconsciously looked at the ground under his feet. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the water-drinking venom snake vulture issue an arrogant command. Swamp moss, force that sky killer butterfly into the sky. You've done well this time. When I return, I'll ask Lady Ling Long for your reward. No matter how lowly you are, with these two apostles, you will definitely be accepted as a believer by the Lord. They might even become Lord Linglong's loyal subjects. While the drinking venomous snake vulture was speaking, Lin Yuan saw a thick layer of moss growing on the ground in the distance. This layer of moss suddenly appeared on the ground, like a layer of velvet blanket. However, this thick blanket contained an aura that was on par with the slaughtering sky butterfly. At that moment, Lin Yuan opened the treasure artifact made of the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac. Endless Summer appeared beside Lin Yuan in her human form. After Endless Summer sensed the current situation, she immediately released her first tribulation of creation monarch level aura. This aura directly crushed the swamp water moss that was continuously growing towards them. At the same time, the water-drinking serpent vulture also rushed into the sky, its face filled with ecstasy, as if it would receive a great reward when it returned. After Endless Summer appeared, the gluttonous butterfly immediately recognized her. This made the killer butterfly feel slightly awkward. After all, he had disturbed Endless Summer's advancement as a creation breed and almost caused her to perish in the creation calamity. However, Endless Summer's appearance made the slaughterer butterfly heave a sigh of relief. At this moment, the predator butterfly directly released the power of the rule world. As soon as the power of the predator butterfly's law world was released, the water-drinking venom snake vulture flying in the sky immediately revealed a look of surprise. This power doesn't belong to this world. You are invaders from another world. Upon hearing its words, Lin Yuan immediately knew that it should have heard of or seen this power with its own eyes. This meant that the water-drinking venom snake vulture might have seen people entering the swamp world from Class 6 dimensional rifts on other continents. Or could it be that the swamp world understood the swamp world like the main world understood the swamp world? He checked the drinking beat snake vulture's status and found that it did not continue to increase its hostility toward the massacre butterfly after saying that it came from an alternate world. This meant that the water-drinking serpent vultures were not overly averse to people from the origin world. Of course, no matter what, Lin Yuan was prepared to kill this water-drinking venom snake vulture. Based on this drinking blood-sucking snake vulture's talent, poison concentration, Lin Yuan was certain that Wendy could absorb the poison in its heart. Wendy had the same ability as this venomous snake vulture. She could absorb poison and level up quickly. Therefore, the heart of the water-drinking serpent vulture was equivalent to a good medicine for Wendy to quickly increase her strength. Just as he was about to let Endless Summer and the slaughter sky butterfly attack together, Wendy, who was lying on the ground in her snake form, suddenly moved. Then, Wendy turned into a young Medusa and crawled toward him. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan hurriedly picked Wendy up and said softly, "Don't worry. Wendy, don't cry. I will avenge you immediately." When Wendy heard Lin Yuan's comfort, she felt even more aggrieved and cried even more fiercely. The moment Wendy woke up, the swamp water moss, which had been hostile to Lin Yuan and the others, immediately showed obvious kindness to Wendy. Then, the water moss all over the ground bloomed and bloomed into flesh-pink flowers. After the flesh-pink flowers bloomed, several brownish-yellow fruits shot into the sky from the flower cores. These brownish-yellow fruits had extremely strong penetrative power and shot straight at the water-drinking serpent vulture. They caught the water-drinking serpent vulture off guard. A few fruits even shattered the sarcomas attached to the scales on the water-drinking serpent vulture's body. They caused considerable injuries to the water-drinking serpent vulture. The water-drinking serpent vulture was completely stunned by this blow. It took a long time to react before it angrily cursed at the swamp water moss. "You filthy thing, are you crazy? How dare you attack me? Not only was the water-drinking serpent vulture stunned, but even Endless Summer and the slaughter sky butterfly were also slightly stunned. They did not understand why the water-drinking serpent vulture's allies were having internal strife at this time. When Lin Yuan saw this scene, he immediately smiled. He thought of the second exclusive skill Wild Plant Affinity that Wendy had obtained after going through the perfect source baptism and becoming an apostle. Wild Plant Affinity was extremely attractive to predatory plants. The plants that preyed on her couldn't help but have a good impression of her. However, he felt that this was not the biggest reason for the marsh water moss's rebellion. Swamp water moss was also a type of predator plant that grew in the swamp world, but it was the lowest level of predator plants. It could be said that the swamp world was filled with swamp moss. The swamp water moss was not picky and could grow just by eating the soil in the swamp world. If they were lucky, they might even be able to catch some small bugs. Under normal circumstances, swamp water moss was very weak. Even if it consciously tried to grab some insects living in the swamp, it would not be able to survive. It was also very likely that the insects would break free and even bite the marsh water moss. Swamp water moss was as common in the swamp world as usneas in the main world. Lin Yuan really did not know how the marsh water moss in front of him had grown to class 10. The marsh water moss's seed attack method was also quite impressive. It could actually injure the water-drinking serpent vulture, which was one grade higher than it. Of course, this was also related to the water-drinking serpent vulture's lack of defense. The marsh water moss might be common and ordinary. However, as long as a marsh-dimensional life form grew to class 10, it would have good intelligence. A large part of the reason why the marsh water moss had rebelled was that it was just an ordinary dimensional life form. It was not an apostle's believer. Moreover, based on the meaning of the water-drinking serpent vulture's words, the marsh water moss was not favored by the apostle it believed in. Presumably, this was the reason why the marsh water moss had defected. The marsh water moss should have seen the situation clearly and decided to help Wendy after weighing the combat power of Endless Summer and the slaughter butterfly. It might even be accepted as a believer by Wendy. Taking advantage of the water-drinking serpent vulture's stunned state, Endless Summer opened her red lips and shouted. Mind pause. Shooting Spear of Summer. Shooting Spear of Summer. As Endless Summer's voice fell, thousands of pink-purple embroidered ball-shaped flowers appeared in midair and rotated gently. Each embroidered ball-shaped flower brought about a rain of flowers as it rotated. Each rain of flowers condensed into a shooting spear and shot straight at the water-drinking serpent vulture, which was stunned in midair after being hit by Mind Pause. Although Endless Summer seemed to have executed the Mind Stop casually, in the process of executing the Mind Stop, Endless Summer had already opened up the Enlightenment Law world. Second more, end of this chapter. Chapter 975. It used almost all the power of the Enlightenment Law world in this Mind Pause. Seeing Endless Summer launching an attack, the Slaughter Sky Butterfly followed closely. The Slaughter Sky Butterfly shouted. Realm Force Field. Slaughter Butterfly Slash. As soon as the Slaughter Sky Butterfly's voice fell, it flapped its wings. It released milky blue butterfly shadows that almost covered the sky. Each of the milky blue butterflies seemed to have the power of 10,000 kilograms, and they formed a ring around the snake vulture. After the ring was formed, it tightly bound the snake vulture's body. At that moment, 3,000 pink-purple shooting guns were coming. Endless Summer was good at support, but its attack power was not strong. Therefore, not every shooting gun of Summer could penetrate the snake vulture's defense. However, it could not stop the snake vulture from being controlled, and there were too many shooting guns of Summer. Nearly 100 shooting guns of Summer hit one spot, and the continuous accumulation of power was enough for the shooting guns of Summer to penetrate the snake vulture. In an instant, the 3,000 shooting guns of Summer pierced nearly 30 holes on the snake vulture's head-sized body. Finally, the Slaughter Sky Butterfly's main body arrived, and its butterfly wings rubbed against the sky to form a milky blue flame. Just as the milky blue flame was about to hit the snake vulture suddenly recovered from Endless Summer's mind control. The snake vulture did not have time to feel its body's condition or activate the exquisite body remnant imprint that it was a God's blessed believer. It could only hurriedly extend its wings to block the slaughter sky butterfly's killing butterfly wings. A skill like killer butterfly wings required time to charge up. Therefore, the damage from the killing butterfly wings was far beyond the slaughter sky butterfly's suzerain X/myth eye. The milky blue butterfly wings, which seemed to be able to flatten the world, slashed the snake vulture's body. It cut the snake vulture's body into 4 pieces. Even though the snake vulture's body was split into 4 pieces, its body was still full of vitality and did not die for a long time. It had to be said that a class 11 dimensional life form with the strength of a creation breed Fae had strong vitality. At that moment, Endless Summer attacked again and shouted, "Midsummer Cage!" 4 cages formed by petals wrapped around the 4 pieces of the snake vulture's body. Finally, the cage crazily grew vines full of pinkish-purple flowers. The vines burrowed into the snake vulture's broken body and swam within it. Endless Summer only stopped growing the vines in the midsummer cage when the corpse of the water-drinking snake vulture no longer had any signs of life. The 4 halves of the snake vulture's body fell onto the thick carpet of marsh moss. Feeling the body of the water-drinking snake vulture fall on its body, the swamp water moss bloomed pink flowers again. But this time, the flesh-pink flower was like a hand, probing into the remains of the snake vulture. He dug out the venomous drinking snake vulture's damaged heart. Then, the pinkish flowers carried the heart to a distance of 10 meters in front of Wendy. It was as if he was offering the heart of the snake vulture, which was held up by the pink flower, to Wendy. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan carried Wendy and walked over. The imbibition snake vulture was a class 11 dimensional creature after all, so Wendy was unable to absorb the venom in its heart in a short period of time. Lin Yuan said to Wendy, "Wendy, this heart is a treasure that can help you level up quickly. You must keep it well." Upon hearing that, Wendy nodded. However, Wendy still looked at the swamp water moss with some fear. She did not dare to reach out and touch the pinkish flowers of the swamp water moss. She just shook her long green hair at the back of her head. Wendy's long green hair immediately extended, and she grabbed the heart of the snake vulture on the pinkish flowers. She used the tips of her hair to absorb the venom in the heart to increase her strength. Lin Yuan found that the dimensional creatures in the swamp world were quite interesting. The snake vulture fed on the Medusa's hair to strengthen its heart. Finally, the Medusa absorbed the venom of the snake vulture's heart to increase its level. The two formed a perfect cycle. Lin Yuan did not stay idle when he asked Wendy to take the snake vulture's heart. He summoned the jasmine lily and used its vitality energy to heal Shiteng and the Class 6 Medusa Scaled Bell. Shiteng and the Class 6 Medusa Scaled Bell were still alive. With the jasmine lily's heal ability, the Scaled Bell and Shiteng quickly recovered. At the same time, due to the jasmine lily's exclusive skill, severance, Shiteng's severed head also grew out. Even so, Shiteng still needed to eat a lot to replenish his energy. After seeing that he had healed Shiteng and the Medusa Scaled Bell, Lin Yuan turned to look at the swamp water moss's true data. Alien beast name, swamp water moss, life form, dimensional life form, alien beast level, 10 talent specialty frowny face moss clothing green field, quickly split the main body into tender, short water moss. The tender, short water moss can choose to parasitize any life form that the water moss can touch and absorb all the nutrients in the life form that can be decomposed. The small water moss can also sacrifice itself to provide nutrients needed for survival for a specific plant or animal on the water moss that it can touch. At a glance, Lin Yuan immediately liked the swamp water moss. The swamp water moss talent specialty, moss clothing green field, could spread green moss on the entire land between the 3 mountains. The swamp water moss could feed on water, and Lin Yuan could easily adjust the water content of the entire land through the swamp water moss. At the same time, the short water moss from the moss clothing green field could also use a parasitic method to remove insects that were hard to find under the entire area. This way, as long as there were no insects that exceeded the swamp water moss's level, the swamp water moss could permanently ensure that insects and other life forms would not interfere with the growing sacred source life form, the Arakawa orchid sprout. The swamp water moss could also sacrifice itself to provide nutrients for the plants or animals it touched. This meant that as long as there were creatures living on the marsh water moss, they would be able to survive without eating. In fact, with the sacrifice of a large number of water moss, their strength could still be slowly increased. This ability might not be very effective on Shiteng, Wendy, and the Class 6 Medusa scaled bell. The energy provided by the water moss sacrifice was far less than Shiteng's, so Wendy and the scaled bell had a big meal. However, the swamp water moss talent specialty, moss clothing green field, was superior in endurance. This ability could completely support the growth of the sacred source life form, Arakawa orchid sprout. This would allow the sacred source life form, Arakawa orchid sprout, to quickly form a scale and increase endless summer's strength. At the very least, the swamp water moss could provide a good environment for Lin Yuan's base camp in the swamp world. At that moment, the dove snake vulture's body suddenly lit up with a grayish-black light. When the recovered Class 6 Medusa scaled bell saw the grayish-black light on the dove snake vulture's body, her eyes flickered with surprise. Chapter 976. The Class 6 Medusa scaled concubine hurriedly turned to look at the apostle she believed in, Shiteng, and then at Lin Yuan. She seemed to be conflicted about who she should report her discovery to. Under normal circumstances, the scaled concubine should report to Shiteng without hesitation. To the believers, the apostle they believed in was their everything. However, the scaled concubine knew that her apostle, Shiteng, had been currying favor with Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan also had the ability to transform ordinary dimensional creatures into apostles with a wave of his hand. Therefore, if the Medusa-scaled concubine reported directly to Shiteng, it was very likely that Lin Yuan would have some thoughts. While the scaled concubine was hesitating, Wendy, who was using her hair to wrap around the snake vulture's heart, saw the change in her expression. Wendy asked timidly, "Mom, are you unhappy?" "If Mom is unhappy, Wendy can sing for Mom." As she spoke, Wendy shrunk into Lin Yuan's arms. Wendy still did not know why her mother, who had been meticulous to her in the past and was even willing to protect her in times of danger, was now so respectful to her. This respect made Wendy feel alienated from the kinship between her and the Class 6 Medusa-scaled concubine. Upon hearing Wendy's words, Lin Yuan also looked at the scaled concubine and asked, "What happened? What's the matter? Do you still feel uncomfortable or have any hidden injuries after I healed you?" The scaled concubine was the first to be discovered by the snake vulture in this storm. At that time, the snake vulture had attacked the scaled concubine because it wanted to use her as food. Thus, half of the scaled concubine's snake hair had been pulled off and swallowed by the snake vulture. Snake hair was especially important to Medusa. The snake hair was directly connected to the brain through the Medusa's cerebral cortex. Damage to the snake hair was likely to cause permanent damage to the brain. However, Lin Yuan felt that his jasmine lily had the exclusive skill, severed continuity. After using severed continuity to heal the scaled concubine, her snake hair had already grown out. Therefore, the scaled concubine should not have any more injuries on her body. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the scaled concubine looked at Shiteng. Lin Yuan immediately understood why the scaled concubine's face was full of hesitation. When Shiteng saw the scaled concubine's questioning gaze, he knew why the scaled concubine was hesitating. Shiteng instinctively stretched his neck and roared, using the language of the swamp world. "If there's anything else, even if you don't report to me immediately, make sure to inform my master." Upon hearing how Shiteng addressed Lin Yuan, an uncontrollable thought appeared in the Medusa-scaled concubine's mind. Could it be that Lord Shiteng was also an apostle created by this young man? After getting Shiteng's permission, the Medusa demon immediately said, My lord, just now I saw the totem mark on the remaining body of the venomous serpent vulture light up with a grayish-black light. This means that this totem imprint has collected a lot of faith power. Now that the water-drinking serpent vulture is dead, the totem mark on its body cannot be activated. That's why the incomplete totem mark can no longer protect the power of faith. The power within the exquisite totem mark will slowly dissipate in the space. At that time, the power of faith within it will dissipate. If it dissipates, the power of faith will be wasted. It's better to let Lord Shiteng absorb the power of faith in the exquisite totem mark. At that time, Lord Shiteng is likely to make up for the power of faith consumed to transform me into a favored believer and directly take in the next believer. As soon as the scaled concubine finished speaking, an ethereal old voice immediately sounded in Lin Yuan's ears. The power of faith in the exquisite totem mark comes from a group of Medusa demons controlled by the venomous serpent vulture. These Medusa demons have to accept the venomous serpent vulture's request every day and pray to it. Once any Medusa demon cannot provide the venomous serpent vulture with the power of faith in the process of praying, the venomous serpent vulture will pull off the Medusa demon's snake hair and eat it one by one. There are about 30 Medusa demons that can provide the venomous serpent vulture with the power of faith now. After 3 months, the power of faith in the venomous serpent vulture's exquisite totem mark has accumulated a lot. Lin Yuan felt that this ethereal old voice was clearly in his ears, but it was very spacious. It seemed to be coming from all directions. However, in an instant, Lin Yuan knew who this old voice belonged to. It was the class 10-dimensional life form, Swamp Water Moss. Upon hearing the Swamp Water Moss's words, Lin Yuan's face revealed a stern expression. The venomous serpent vulture was not an apostle and could not take in believers. Therefore, it was very difficult to collect the power of faith. Lin Yuan remembered that the scaled concubine had said that if she could control 1,000 swamp crocodiles, then these 1,000 swamp crocodiles could provide her with about 5 portions of the power of faith every day. This was because the scaled concubine's talent, the swamp crocodile song, would attract the love of the swamp crocodiles, which was why it had such a significant effect. However, as a highly intelligent creature, the Medusa demons were not simple-minded swamp crocodiles. It was often difficult for highly intelligent creatures to have faith in something. In addition, the venomous serpent vulture was a terrifying natural enemy to the Medusa demons. Lin Yuan found it hard to imagine that according to the ratio that the scaled concubine had given him, the venomous serpent vulture had chosen these 30 Medusa demons that could provide the power of faith. How many more Medusa demons could he kill? There should be at least 8,000 of them. When the scaled concubine heard the swamp water moss's words, her body trembled slightly, as if she was afraid of the swamp water moss's words and mourning for her kind. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the swamp water moss speak again. I think it's more suitable to give the power of faith in the exquisite totem to Lady Wendy. Lady Wendy has accepted the faith offered by these Medusa demons to the venomous serpent vulture and digested it. She can imperceptibly contact the 30 Medusa demons. Thus, she can domesticate these 30 Medusa demons. With this power of faith, even if I'm a class 10-dimensional life form, Lady Wendy can take me in as a believer. If Lady Wendy is willing, she can also promote me to a favored believer. At that time, I can also better protect Lady Wendy's safety. Lin Yuan didn't expect that the swamp water moss, a class 10-dimensional life form, would actually promote himself like this and want him to have a chance to become Wendy's believer. Just now, the swamp water moss had also invisibly won a wave of power of faith from the exquisite totem imprint. Upon hearing the swamp water moss's words, Lin Yuan was also quite fond of letting Wendy absorb the power of faith in the exquisite totem imprint. The first one was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 977. Wendy was Lin Yuan's contracted life form, which was equivalent to a part of his strength. Swamp Moss became a believer of Wendy. It was equivalent to giving him the power of a class 10-dimensional life form. A class 10-dimensional life form's strength was equivalent to a suzerain class 10 Genesis I Fei. Lin Yuan carried Wendy and stepped on the swamp's water moss, heading toward the drinking venom snake vulture's remains. Lin Yuan asked the swamp water moss while advancing. If I use faith power before the power within the incomplete exquisite body totem imprint runs out, will the apostle with the incomplete exquisite body totem imprint sense it? Swamp water moss replied. Incomplete and exquisite body, Tui. That stinky scorpion should have already sensed the death of his believers. However, this place is very far from that stinky scorpion's nest. Even at full speed, the water-drinking serpent vulture will need nearly a month and a half. From such a great distance, even as an apostle, I can't sense the totem imprint I've carved on Exa and Min's body. Therefore, it wouldn't matter even if I destroyed the totem mark on the body. At that time, as long as Lady Wendy uses the totem on her body and uses the power of the totem to absorb the remains of the snake vulture, the exquisite totem imprint will be able to absorb the power of faith within the totem imprint. When apostles meet each other, they will definitely fight to the death, mutually plunder each other's totems. I didn't expect Lady Wendy to get along so well with the other apostles. Lin Yuan could clearly feel the doubt in the marshwater moss's words. Since the marshwater moss said it was fine, Lin Yuan said to Wendy. Wendy, activate your triflower snake pupil totem to absorb the power of faith. Upon hearing his words, Wendy nodded obediently. Immediately after, a totem that looked like a green eye appeared on Wendy's forehead. The 3 pupils in the totem rotated rapidly, and each pupil turned into a small flower. When the 3 of them gathered together, an amber light fell on the mark on the snake vulture's body. This amber totemic power was clearly a level higher than the grayish-black light on the water-drinking serpent vulture's totemic mark. The light of the triflower snake pupil totem pierced through the grayish-black light on the totem mark on the broken body. Immediately, a faint milky white power fused with the amber light, and the power of faith accumulated in Wendy's body continued to grow. By the time Wendy used the triflower snake pupil totem to completely absorb the power of faith accumulated in the exquisite totem, Wendy's power of faith was still in an extremely weak state. However, Wendy's triflower snake pupil totem was clearly brighter than the multi-headed lizard totem on Shiting's front body. After Wendy finished absorbing the power of faith, Lin Yuan suddenly thought of something and asked her. Wendy, if you use your innate skill, Snake Descendant Paradise, to turn a snake life form into your snake hair. Is there a requirement for the quality of snake life forms? Upon hearing that, Wendy tilted her head and asked Lin Yuan in confusion. What is quality? Wendy doesn't know. Wendy only knows those little snakes. The more poisonous they are, the more powerful Wendy is. Upon hearing her words, Lin Yuan nodded. It seemed like his contracted Wendy was also a little prodigal and had extremely high requirements for snake phase quality. This was because the higher the quality of a snake fae, the more poisonous it would be. It seemed like it was best to raise the quality of those snake faes that he had collected for Wendy to bronze/legend. Although the number of hairs of a Medusa could not compare to that of a human, some powerful Medusa often had thousands of snake hairs. Lin Yuan suddenly felt that it was really good for Wendy's family to be so deceptive. Fortunately, it was much easier for him to nurture bronze/legend phase now. Currently, one spirit chi crystal in the spirit lock spatial zone could produce 50 to 60 bronze/legend phase in batches. Therefore, Lin Yuan could still afford to raise Wendy. Lin Yuan said as he sensed the anticipation that was about to overflow from the swamp water moss. Since you want Wendy to accept you as a believer, you have to convince Wendy yourself. After saying that, he placed Wendy in the arms of the slaughter sky butterfly in human form. Then, he said to Endless Summer. Endless Summer, let's go. I'll take you to the place where you planted your sacred source life form, Arakawa orchid sprout. When Endless Summer came out of Lin Yuan's artifact made from the treasure cave golden toad's skin and stomach sac, she already knew where she was. Endless Summer did not expect Lin Yuan to have the ability to freely enter and exit dimensional worlds from the main world. There was really no place more suitable for planting Arakawa orchid sprout than the swamp world. However, Endless Summer did not even dare to think of planting Arakawa orchid sprout in the swamp world. After arriving at the location marked with the ethereal jellyfish's tentacles, Lin Yuan said, "The water content of this place is not bad. The water content of this place is pretty good. My feet will sink into my ankles when I step on it. The water here is replenished by the endless swamp ahead. No matter how much the Arakawa orchid sprout absorbs, it will be able to maintain an adequate water source. If the Arakawa orchid sprout grows more in the future and its demand for water increases, I can find some spirit craftsmen to build a circle of water around the Arakawa orchid sprout. This way, the Arakawa orchid sprout will never have to worry about its water source. The swamp world is rich in a lot of swamp soil, which is of great help to the Arakawa orchid sprout star class. I have collected a lot of swamp soil now. In a while, I will bury the swamp soil suitable for the Arakawa orchid sprout to absorb under this land. Let the Arakawa orchid sprout absorb it to grow faster and strengthen your strength as soon as possible. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Endless Summer was moved once again. Lin Yuan was always so considerate to his companions. Endless Summer stretched out her palm, and a delicate orchid sprout appeared in her palm. Endless Summer carefully inserted this delicate orchid sprout into the ground. Immediately after, Lin Yuan could clearly feel that this delicate Arakawa orchid sprout was like a huge sewer that was frenziedly absorbing water. At the same time, Lin Yuan used true data to check on the Arakawa orchid sprout and found that its roots were growing rapidly. With the Arakawa orchid sprout as the center, the densely packed roots had spread out to a radius of 100 meters in just half a minute. The roots that had spread out to a radius of 100 meters were still constantly expanding. The roots were all more than 400 meters underground, frantically squeezing the nutrients in the ground. Under the large amount of nutrients, the delicate Arakawa orchid sprout was slowly growing. The orchid fragrance on the delicate Arakawa orchid sprout was getting stronger and stronger. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan made a selection from all of his swamp soil. The second one was even better. End of this chapter. Chapter 978. He selected 25 lumps of intermediate swamp soil suitable for Arakawa orchid to absorb and buried them around Arakawa orchid. Nourished by the 25 lumps of swamp soil, Arakawa orchid sprout grew a stalk. It seemed that this Arakawa orchid sprout was preparing to bud. When the flower bud bloomed, Endless Summer would have the ability to heal. I'll get the slaughtering butterfly to guard this area. Together with the swamp water moss, as long as no 11th dimensional creatures appear, there shouldn't be any safety problems. A few batches of spirit craftsmen will enter the swamp world in a few days. I will have these spirit craftsmen build a greenhouse to protect Arakawa orchid sprout. The talent of the marsh water moss is very helpful for the growth of Arakawa orchid sprout. I will let Wendy command the marsh water moss to help the Arakawa orchid sprout grow. You don't have to worry about the matters in the swamp world. Go to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce during this time. The Nix assembly has already ended. Some people probably can't wait any longer. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Endless Summer nodded. Lin Yuan, you might as well send me out of the swamp world now. I'll go to the Listening Heron Chamber of Commerce immediately. I'll be in charge of the Spirit Deer Chamber of Commerce. You can also transfer Duanhe back. Duanhe had wanted to go out and train for a period of time to improve Purple Demon's strength. Now is the perfect opportunity. Upon hearing Endless Summer's words, Lin Yuan nodded. If Duanhe wanted to go out to train, Lu Jia, as the white-robed majordomo, had been collecting white-robed followers. Including Zhou Luo, there were now a total of 14 white-clothed followers in Sky City. At that time, he could let Duanhe take these white-clothed followers out to train and improve their strength at the same time. After sending the artifacts made from the treasure cave Golden Toad's stomach and skin back to the main world, he returned to the swamp world again. He didn't know what kind of magic potion Swamp Water Moss had fed Wendy, but now, Swamp Water Moss had become one of Wendy's believers. The data from before had also changed greatly. Exotic beast name, Swamp Water Moss, life form, dimensional creature, blessed believer, exotic beast level, 10, totem faith, triflower snake pupil totem innate skills frowny face mossy green domain, rapidly divides the main body into small and delicate water moss. The small and delicate water moss can parasitize any life that the water moss comes into contact with, absorbing all the nutrients in the life's body that can be decomposed. Or the little water moss could sacrifice itself to provide the nutrients needed for survival for a specific plant or animal on the water moss that it could touch. At the same time, its main body could also produce a part of the water moss that was suitable for floating in the swamp and sense the surrounding environment through the water moss. After the swamp water moss became a blessed believer, its talent ability, Mossy Green Field, gained a new detection ability. With this detection function, he could use the swamp water moss to explore the situation in the boundless swamp. This way, he could use Hub Klein as the core to map the swamp world bit by bit. After the marsh water moss became Wendy's believers, almost the entire land was covered with a thick layer of moss. The soft moss made Lin Yuan feel like he was stepping on an expensive cashmere carpet. Without needing Lin Yuan's instructions, the swamp water moss had already started to sacrifice itself to provide nutrients for the Arakawa orchid sprout. No matter where Wendy went, the swamp water moss would bloom with hundreds of small pink flowers around her. Looking at the environment in front of him, Lin Yuan was very satisfied. The power of faith in the exquisite imprint on the drinking goblet snake vulture's remnant body had been completely absorbed by Wendy. However, as a Class 11 dimensional life form, the drinking goblet snake vulture's body hid something that Lin Yuan had never come into contact with so far. After a Fae became a creation breed, if it was killed, it would be able to find the law crystal in the creation breed Fae's body. The world crystal, which was transformed from a law crystal, could be found in the creation breed Fae's body. Dimensional life forms were no exception. When a dimensional life form reached Class 10, the law crystal in its body would transform into a world crystal. Looking at the Class 11 drinking goblet snake vulture's body, Lin Yuan did not know how to start for a moment. As a Class 11 dimensional life form, even after death, the drinking goblet snake vulture's body was very solid and hard. Unless Lin Yuan commanded the princess to transform into the sacred sword form and borrow the law power, he would be able to cut the drinking goblet snake vulture's body and dig out the world crystal. However, this operation was really too wasteful. Just as Lin Yuan was about to find the slaughter butterfly and let it cut it up, the princess's surprised voice suddenly sounded in Lin Yuan's mind. "Wow! Master! When did you get such delicious food? I want to eat it. I want to eat it. I want to eat it. I want to eat it." As she spoke, the ahog on the princess's head stood up one by one. Looking at the princess in the depths of his soul, Lin Yuan felt that she was just short of drooling. Lin Yuan thought that the princess was talking about the world crystal hidden in the drinking goblet snake vulture's body. Who would have thought that the princess's next words would make Lin Yuan's face light up with joy? Every inch of this Class 11 dimensional life form's flesh contains a trace of source-type power. Therefore, as long as a dimensional life form is above Class 10, I can absorb every inch of its flesh. This Class 11 dimensional life form is also a favored believer, so the source-type power contained in its flesh has become even more. Although these source-type powers are very mixed, like ribs that are hard to chew. But I'll definitely be able to chew them clean. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan summoned the princess and said, "Then you might as well absorb the drinking goblet snake vulture's body now. Then you might as well absorb the drinking goblet snake vulture's body now. But keep the world crystal in the drinking goblet snake vulture's body first. I'll check it first before letting you absorb it." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the princess happily agreed. Then, she danced in midair, and the edges of her dress scattered into silk threads. Nearly 10,000 silk threads wrapped the drinking goblet snake vulture's body firmly. As the princess absorbed the source-type power in the drinking goblet snake vulture's body, Lin Yuan found that she had actually absorbed nearly 550 portions of source-type power from the Class 11 dimensional life form's body. This was equivalent to making up for the source-type power that Lin Yuan had consumed for the perfect source baptism for Wendy and Shiteng. It had even allowed Lin Yuan to obtain an additional 50 portions of source-type power. Lin Yuan felt that as the main world's major factions explored the abyss, they would sooner or later obtain the bodies of Class 10 and Class 11 dimensional life forms. At that time, exchanging for these bodies from the major factions would undoubtedly be more cost-effective than exchanging for law source crystals. When the princess's dress formed tens of thousands of silk threads and swayed, a dazzling crystal reflected in Lin Yuan's eyes. Chapter 979. Lin Yuan saw a faint golden light flickering in the crystal. Upon seeing this golden light, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that it was a little familiar, as though he had seen this golden light before. Apart from the sparkling golden light inside the crystal, there were also several milky white power flowing like water. At first glance, it was like seeing the Milky Way setting sun in broad daylight. Immediately after, Lin Yuan's mind was left with the princess' voice of wanting to eat it. Lin Yuan could clearly feel that the princess had fallen into a state of madness. Upon seeing the princess in such a state, Lin Yuan knew that the foodie was really craving for food. This also showed the preciousness of the world source crystal produced in the body of the Class 11 snake vulture. However, Lin Yuan was still unclear about the use of this world source crystal and needed to ask the princess. Even Genius had almost all the knowledge of Class 4 Scholar, Class 4 Fey Observer, and Class 4 Fey Analyst. It still knew nothing about things at the level of the world source crystal. This was because the information of such things would not appear on Star Web. Lin Yuan reached out to the princess, who was standing beside him with her hair standing on end, and pressed down her hair before saying, "Princess, you want to eat this world source crystal so much. Princess, if you want to eat this world origin crystal so much, what's the use of it after eating it? What can it be broken down into?" When the princess heard Lin Yuan's words, her hair that had just been pressed down stood up again. "Master, once I eat this world source crystal, I can break it down into a world crystal that contains pure world power that can help creation breed phase break through their limits. As for how to use the world crystal, I don't know." Upon hearing the princess' words, Lin Yuan raised his brows slightly. This function could be said to be within Lin Yuan's expectations. The world source crystal also had the same ability as the law source crystal. However, the law source crystal produced in the bodies of Class 7 to Class 9 dimensional lifeforms would be used on myth breed phase. On the other hand, the world source crystal produced in the bodies of Class 10 and above dimensional lifeforms would be used on creation breed phase. Endless Summer's current strength was that of the creation lineage. When Lin Yuan had previously communicated with Endless Summer, he knew that there was a threshold for creation breed phase in the 5 creation lineages. Before the 5 creation lineages, phase still had to absorb pure power of law to perfect the world of law that had evolved from law. However, at the peak of the 4 bloodlines of creation, the nomological power in the nomological world had already reached its peak. The world of laws could no longer contain any more rule power. At that moment, phase could only slowly refine the massive law power in the law world into pure world power to increase their strength again. In other words, when a Fae reached the 5 tribulations of creation, the law world would no longer have the power of law. Instead, it was all converted into world energy. According to the information he had obtained from Endless Summer, he felt that if he let the princess decompose the world source crystal, the world source crystal would be destroyed. The world crystal that contained pure nomological power should only be used by 5 tribulations of creation and above. This was the same logic as only myth breed phase at the pinnacle of myth 2 and above could use the law crystal. A world crystal that contains pure rule force is indeed a good thing. However, Lin Yuan could not use such good items at all and could only keep them at the bottom of the box. However, Lin Yuan was exceptionally happy that the world source crystals were within his expectations. The Class 6 Abyss Dimensional Rift in the Radiance Federation had only just opened. The Radiance Federation's top factions and veteran factions had only just begun to explore the Abyss world. It could be said that the highest dimensional rift that had opened in the entire Radiance Federation was only Class 5. The strongest dimensional life form in the Class 5 dimensional rift was only Class 9. Lin Yuan did not know about the situation with the Majesties, but the major veteran factions and top factions should not have world source crystals in their hands. The major veteran factions and top factions could not even use the law source crystals. Presumably, even if they obtained world source crystals from the Class 6 Abyss Dimensional Rift, they could only put them in their hands and look at them. At that time, Lin Yuan would have the opportunity to exchange rare resources for the world source crystals that the major veteran factions and top factions obtained. Lin Yuan was invisibly receiving the support of all the veteran factions and top factions exploring the Abyss world. Lin Yuan felt that the feeling of being supported by all the major factions should be very good. Lin Yuan realized that the opening of the Radiance Federation's Class 6 Abyss world should be considered an opportunity in a sense. He must grasp this opportunity. However, he was already developing the Swamp World. Should he still consume manpower and resources to develop the Abyss world? This had become a problem that Lin Yuan needed to think about carefully. Although the Swamp World was far more suitable for development than the Abyss World also had something that the Swamp World could not compare to. The opening of the Class 6 Abyss Dimensional Rift would indicate that the price of Fire-type spiritual ingredients in the Radiance Federation would decrease significantly. At that time, the major factions that dealt in spiritual ingredients would be hit by the sharp decrease in the price of Fire-type spiritual ingredients. When Lin Yuan had used the flower brocade pearls to trade for extraordinary flames, he had specifically checked the price of extraordinary flames. He had found that some factions' functions were actually to deal in the extraordinary flames trade. No matter how strong these factions' backing was, as long as they used extraordinary flames as a function, they would suffer a devastating blow. At that time, the price of demon flesh, which had the highest unit price among all dimensional lifeforms' flesh, would also decrease significantly. In that case, the price of the underground world and the swamp world's dimensional lifeforms' flesh would definitely rise. The price increase determined by the market trend would definitely cause the major chambers of commerce to take the initiative to raise the price of the underground world and the swamp world's dimensional lifeforms' flesh. Lin Yuan did not need to worry at all. He only needed to follow the market trend. He would be able to make unlimited profits through the resources produced by the swamp world. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard the princess continue to speak. Master, do you remember the 2 small golden pearls that you condensed by collecting the endless summer and the slaughtering butterflies' creation earth veins? Upon hearing the princess' words, Lin Yuan suddenly knew why the golden light in the world source crystal had been so familiar. It was because the golden light in the world source crystal was the same color as the creation earth veins that the creation breed phase had descended after experiencing the creation calamity. Lin Yuan had not taken the time to ask the princess what the 2 golden pearls were used for. Now that the princess had taken the initiative to mention it, Lin Yuan naturally had to ask clearly. Lin Yuan flipped his hand and took out the 2 small golden beads before asking the princess, "What is it?" He asked the princess, "Princess, since you mentioned the creation earth veins condensed into golden pearls." Chapter 980. Then you should know what these 2 little golden beads are used for. The princess hurriedly replied. Master, did you notice that after I used source energy to upgrade the complete rule to a rule world, there was no creation earth vein in the rule world? Lin Yuan nodded in response. Under normal circumstances, the law existed in a living myth breed phase body. If a myth breed fae wanted to obtain the creation earth vein, it would have to undergo the world creation calamity. The princess only needed origin energy to strengthen the complete rule. Everything was as calm as the wind and the waves. When he had used the Dark Death World's power, he found that the damage of the Dark Death World's Jackdaw Withering Strike was far less than that of a creation breed fae. At most, it would be comparable to an all-out attack from a Pinnacle Myth 2 fae. At the thought of the 2 golden pearls that he had condensed by absorbing Endless Summer and the Slaughtering Butterflies' creation earth veins, he asked the princess. Can these 2 gold beads be integrated into the world of Dark Death? These 2 golden pearls came from the earth vein of creation, so they should have the same effect as the earth vein of creation. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the princess first nodded and then shook her head. The 2 golden pearls come from different creation breed phase, so the 2 golden pearls formed from the creation breed earth veins are very different. The Dark Death World can only embed one of the golden beads to create the Genesis geographical vein. Apart from being able to purify world crystals that contain pure world energy, world source crystals can also absorb a higher level of pure source energy. I can use this pure origin energy to strengthen the little golden bead embedded in the rule world, allowing the little golden bead to grow into a complete Genesis earth vein. At that time, through source energy, I can continue to break through the quality of the world of laws. It's just that every time the nomological world's quality is upgraded, the nomological world's interior needs to be reborn into a complete world creation geographical vein before it can be upgraded again. Upon hearing the princess' words, Lin Yuan immediately had a detailed understanding of the usage of the gold beads and the world source crystals produced from dimensional lifeforms that were class 10 and above. Through Morbius' exclusive skill, Pure Land of Bliss, he had absorbed a larger number of gold pearls from Endless Summer's creation Earth Vein than from the Slaughtering Sky Butterfly's creation Earth Vein. Lin Yuan handed the golden bead he had absorbed from Endless Summer's Calamity of Creation to the princess. Princess, merge this golden bead with the Dark Death World. Then, absorb this World Origin Crystal and use it to strengthen the golden orb implanted in the Dark Death Rule. Hearing Lin Yuan's words, the princess replied. Master, it will take about 7 days to transplant this golden bead into the Dark Death Realm. But after 7 days, the power of the Dark Death World with the Earth Vein of Creation will increase tremendously. If Master uses Holy Sword mode to use Dark Crow Withering Strike, the lethality of Dark Crow Withering Strike will increase. But Master, can I eat this World Origin Crystal before transplanting the gold bead into the Dark Death World? I've never tasted a World Origin Crystal before. Upon hearing the princess' words, Lin Yuan couldn't help but smile. This was not really a request. Of course, Lin Yuan had to pamper his sacred source life form. Upon seeing Lin Yuan nod, the princess immediately spun around happily and let out a burst of crisp and cheerful laughter. After Lin Yuan obtained the World Origin Crystal and had a conversation with the princess, he realized how long he still had to go. It would not be difficult for him to absorb laws through the princess' skirt to increase his strength. However, it would not be easy to raise his strength to a higher level. It was not easy to collect the Earth Vein of Creation from under the nose of a creation seed Fae that had survived the calamity of creation. Lin Yuan would need to rack his brains in the future. However, Lin Yuan still had the Mother of Bloodbath, Endless Summer, and the Slaughterer Butterfly. Just relying on the Mother of Bloodbath, Endless Summer, and the Slaughterer Butterfly to survive the calamity of creation and harvest the Earth Vein of Creation, Lin Yuan could support at least 3 nomological worlds to continuously improve. It was considered a blessing in misfortune. After storing the princess back into the depths of his soul, Lin Yuan turned to the Slaughterer Butterfly. Slaughterer Butterfly, you'll have to protect the territory's safety in the swamp world during this period of time. I'll let Purple Firmament accompany you in the swamp world. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Slaughterer Butterfly in human form smiled gently and said, with Purple Firmament around, it's the same wherever I am. My lord, it's not hard for me. I'm just building my home. My lord, it's not hard for me. I'm just building my own home. Upon hearing the Slaughterer Butterfly's words, Lin Yuan was slightly startled. Then, Lin Yuan looked at the Slaughterer Butterfly with a somewhat strange gaze. It seemed that the Slaughterer Butterfly had now begun to regard itself as Purple Firmament's wife. It actually said that the swamp world was its home, but it seemed to be the case. Purple Firmament did not let down the Slaughterer Butterfly's efforts and gentleness to Purple Firmament at all. Perhaps the most beautiful appearance of love was that one's sincerity could be reciprocated. But to be honest, Lin Yuan was still a single dog. However, his contracted phase had already begun to appear in pairs. Therefore, Lin Yuan had to be prepared to be showered with dog food often in the future. But to be honest, this male butterfly, Purple Firmament, could find a creation seed Fae as a wife when it was at bronze. It was simply too awesome. Purple Firmament was definitely a model for butterfly species Faes. Killer Butterfly, if you have the time, try to communicate with the swamp water moss. Let the marsh moss spread out a large area of defense green carpet, and use the probing ability of the innate talent to scout the surroundings of the territory. This way, we can also give an early warning when danger comes. If you encounter a situation like today again, you can ask Purple Firmament, who is in the swamp world, to fly back to the Spirit Lock spatial zone to inform me. I'll think of a way to provide support as soon as I receive the notification. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Slaughterer Sky Butterfly nodded and replied, that's right. All right. My lord just gave me a lot of Earth Elemental Heavenly Maiden Grade pearls. I will use these pure Earth elements to recover my depleted bloodline and break through to the Monarch rank as soon as possible. This way, Even if a level 11 blessed serpent vulture comes, I'll be able to deal with it in time. Wendy and Shiteng won't get hurt again. Swamp Moss hurriedly expressed his stance. Sir, even if I have to risk my life, I will protect Lady Wendy's life. My lord, why don't you leave a space on the land for me? I will use the moss to draw a map of the surroundings on this land. It's just that the water in the swamp doesn't flow very fast, so it will take a long time for the tiny moss to drift further. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan turned to look at Shiteng and the Medusa demon Lin Ji, who were happily shaking their 5 heads. Chapter 981. I've prepared a lot of blood that can resist the digestion of carrion-eating fungi. We might as well go and attract some marsh crocodiles immediately. After speaking to Shiteng and the Lin Ji, Lin Yuan spoke to the swamp water moss under his feet. Use the tiny swamp moss to attach to the back of the marsh crocodiles that the Lin Ji controls. Draw a map of the marsh world through the movements of these marsh crocodiles. Then, you don't have to worry about the flow speed in the marsh. After giving instructions to the swamp water moss, Lin Yuan gave instructions to Wendy. Wendy, you have to absorb the poison in the drinking venom snake vulture's heart under the protection of the swamp water moss and increase your strength as soon as possible. Then, Lin Yuan leaped onto Shiteng's back and headed toward the marsh at the edge of the land. When they arrived at the edge of the marsh, Lin Yuan found that there were only dozens of marsh crocodiles there. When they saw Shiteng coming, they immediately revealed a fearful expression. However, they still opened their big mouths in the water, looking both defensive and provocative. The Class 6 Medusa Lin Ji finally caught up with Shiteng's speed. After seeing these 30-odd marsh crocodiles, she explained, after the drinking venom snake vulture discovered me, it used its buzzing to kill all the marsh crocodiles I controlled. Those marsh crocodiles were blown into meat paste. It can be said that the drinking venom snake vulture cleared out the marsh crocodiles at the edge of the marsh. These 30-odd marsh crocodiles should have been attracted by the smell of blood. After saying that, the Medusa snake demon sang the marsh crocodile song. It controlled the 30-odd marsh crocodiles in the marsh. At that moment, the strongest marsh crocodile in the marsh was only Class 6, so it was easily controlled by the Medusa snake demon. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan picked up a bucket of tunnel rat blood that Listen had prepared and poured it into the marsh. As a fey that fed on decaying substances, the tunnel rat's blood had an extremely strong anti-decay ability. When Lin Yuan had been in the Xia region, he had often seen tunnel rats being killed at the garbage collection area. However, if no one cleaned up these killed tunnel rats, they would not rot even if they were piled up for a month. When the tunnel rat blood was poured into the marsh, it mixed with the black water in the marsh and immediately emitted an unpleasant smell. Upon smelling this unpleasant smell, Lin Yuan did not immediately retreat. Instead, he took out 2 more buckets of the tunnel rat's blood and poured it into the swamp. He wanted to see the effects of the 3 buckets of blood. He was really afraid that as a low-grade fey, the smell of the tunnel rat's blood would not be attractive to the marsh crocodile. However, he soon discovered that his worries were unnecessary. The swamp in the distance was already rippling. In just a few minutes, the swamp crocodiles had smelled the blood of the tunnel rats and swam over. An hour later, the Lin Ji spoke softly. My lord, the number of swamp crocodiles I can control through the swamp crocodile's song has reached its limit. If I control more swamp crocodiles, the loyalty of the 1,500 swamp crocodiles under my control will weaken. Lin Yuan nodded upon hearing Listen's words. Lin Yuan had truly underestimated the attractiveness of blood to the marsh crocodiles. This should also be because the smell of blood in the swamp world would not exist for long under the digestion of the scavenging bacteria. Now that an hour had passed, the blood of the pit rats had mostly been digested by the marsh scavenging fungi. However, the highly developed rot-eating fungi in the swamp had never encountered a bone as hard to chew as the blood of the tunnel rats. After an hour, only 1/5 of the rat's blood had been digested by the scavenging fungi. This meant that the blood of the tunnel rats could last up to 5 hours in the swamp. However, as more and more swamp crocodiles gathered at the shore, he frowned. When the Lin Ji was singing the swamp crocodile song, she had been paying attention to Shi Teng and Lin Yuan's expressions. The Lin Ji immediately said when she saw Lin Yuan frowning, "Sir, why don't you let the 1,500 swamp crocodiles under my control attack the other swamp crocodiles that are attracted by the smell of blood? The marsh crocodile can increase its strength and level by devouring its companions, allowing its body to grow bigger and stronger. Through the swamp crocodiles devouring each other, I can continuously increase the strength of the 1,500 swamp crocodiles that I control. Even if the swamp crocodiles I was controlling were killed by other swamp crocodiles, I could still chant the swamp crocodile's song to quickly replenish them. These marsh crocodiles would eat each other, and the high-level marsh crocodiles would be a good source of food for Lord Shiteng." Upon hearing the Medusa's words, Lin Yuan suddenly felt that the serpent-haired Medusa was indeed a half-human creature with a snake's body. It was simply vicious. However, this method could indeed increase the defense of the swamp world's outer territory. It could be said that the Lin Ji, who was a believer of Shiteng's control, had created Lin Yuan's first troop of swamp crocodiles in the swamp world. Lin Yuan threw a face storage box to the Lin Ji and said, "There's a large amount of tunnel rat blood inside. There's a large amount of tunnel rat blood in here. You can choose from it. At the same time, I'll also think of a way to increase your strength as soon as possible so that you can control more swamp crocodiles." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the Lin Ji immediately revealed a pleasantly surprised expression. This youth in front of her could create an apostle with a wave of his hand, and she was fortunate to be favored by this youth. She was simply too lucky. The arrangements in the swamp world had come to an end, and Lin Yuan returned to the main world. For the past 2 days, Hu Quan had started to select the spirit craftsman slots to head to the swamp world. Lin Yuan also continued to work hard and constantly enhance phase. On one hand, it was to complete the cooperation with Sun Ningxiang and Long Shao. On the other hand, it was to help Wendy enhance the snake species phase to bronze/legend. Lin Yuan felt a little strange. His blind trade with the flower brocade pearls should have ended. This time, he had collected the few aurora pollen on the market. At this time, the veteran faction, the Sea of Bliss, should have long been in chaos. However, according to Wen Yu's investigation, the Sea of Bliss was as stable as an old dog. There was no panic at all, and they were still constantly expanding their overseas development. Lin Yuan could be sure that the Sea of Bliss did not have much aurora pollen in reserve. According to the aurora pollen transaction information in the Dew Immortal Garden provided by Sun Ningxiang, the Sea of Bliss had purchased a batch of aurora pollen from the market 6 months ago. Since then, they had not purchased even half a kilogram of aurora pollen from the market. This was also the Sea of Bliss' shrewd strategy for collecting aurora pollen. Every 6 months, when the market price of aurora pollen fell to the lowest point, they would purchase in large quantities. This purchase method had saved a lot of money for the Sea of Bliss over the years. As the Sea of Bliss wantonly purchased aurora pollen every 6 months, the price of aurora pollen was bound to rise. The Sea of Bliss could also wait for the aurora pollen's price to fall over the next 6 months. Lin Yuan suddenly thought of a possibility that made him not know whether to laugh or cry. Could it be that the Sea of Bliss had been focusing on a few fisheries in the distant sea and was so slow that it did not notice the change in the aurora pollen's market price? Just as Lin Yuan was pondering, his phone suddenly rang. Upon seeing that it was a missed call, Lin Yuan raised his brows. After picking up the call, he heard an apprehensive female voice on the other end of the line. "Is this Black? I'm Tian Ningning. Where should we meet?" Chapter 982. Before Lin Yuan could speak, Tian Ningning spoke again. "It doesn't feel right to go to your house for our first meeting. Why don't we find a place outside to talk first?" Upon hearing Tian Ningning's voice, Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel enlightened. For the past 2 days, Lin Yuan had been busy with his own matters, and time had passed very quickly. Whenever Lin Yuan was busy, he wouldn't have a sense of time. As long as he could persevere, he wouldn't rest for a moment. Therefore, Tian Ningning's call made Lin Yuan feel that these 2 days had just passed in an instant. Lin Yuan looked out the window and realized that the royal capital's noon was a sunny day. The breeze under the sun grazed the drifting clouds, which were like thin gauze. Before they could gather into clouds, they would be turned into mist by the sun. The mist surged and turned into drifting clouds, quiet, sweet, and endless. Due to the mountain river Eternal Life Carp's exclusive skill, Place of Life, the return from faraway mansion was always full of vitality and greenery. Upon seeing the sun in front of him, Lin Yuan realized that it was already warm despite being cold. Spring had arrived. Lin Yuan had always wanted to buy a batch of 100 Questions beasts for Genius to guide and train. Since Tian Ningning wasn't planning to come to the return from faraway mansion directly and was planning to meet outside. In that case, he could also take this opportunity to pick some 100 Questions beasts. It was almost noon, and it was time for lunch. He might as well meet Tian Ningning for lunch outside. Anyway, Lin Yuan wasn't planning to hide anything from Tian Ningning. Apart from his identity as a faction in Sky City, Lin Yuan wasn't planning to hide anything else from Tian Ningning. Rather than asking Tian Ningning to come to the mansion directly, it was better to talk while eating outside. Alright, the Spirit Food Pavilion beside the Tongxi Avenue's Creation Master Association has recently launched an early spring set meal. Many people on Star Web are saying that the Spirit Food Pavilion's new early spring set meal is rather good. Why don't we go there for lunch and talk? When Tian Ningning heard Lin Yuan's words through the phone, she suddenly felt her ears burning. Previously, she had heard Black's voice on Star Web. But now that she had returned to the real world from Star Web, she could hear the youth's magnetic and clear voice through the phone. Tian Ningning felt as if her heart had skipped a beat. As Black's exclusive reporter, Tian Ningning was in charge of Black's external affairs on Star Web. However, Tian Ningning could not deny that there was a long distance between her and Black. Now that she made the call, Tian Ningning felt that the distance between her and Black had been shortened a lot. Tian Ningning had always wanted to know more about Black. Now, she finally had the chance. After meeting Black once offline, Tian Ningning felt that she and Black could be considered familiar. At that time, if something really happened and he couldn't contact Black, he could go to Black's place to look for him. He wouldn't have to ask Black to meet him outside like now. Alright. It's a deal then. It just so happens that Star Web has given us plenty of benefits during the new year, and one of them is the Spirit Food Pavilion's discount coupons. Let me treat you to a meal. Upon hearing Tian Ningning's words, Lin Yuan's mouth revealed a trace of a smile. However, Lin Yuan didn't say whether Tian Ningning would treat him. Then let's meet in an hour and a half at the Spirit Food Pavilion on Tongxi Avenue. After making the agreement with Tian Ningning, Lin Yuan hung up the phone. Just as Lin Yuan hung up the call, there was a knock on the door. Lin Yuan opened the door and saw Wen Yu standing at the entrance. She was holding a rack filled with clothes. Wen Yu staggered a little as she lifted the rack full of clothes and poked her head out of the rack with difficulty. "Young master, these are the clothes that I designed with Pinru. These are all designed according to your body shape. I just happened to give them to you." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan hurriedly took the clothes rack from her hand and placed it in the cloakroom area of his room. Looking at the clothes rack that was filled with clothes, Lin Yuan felt that there were at least 20 sets of spirit chi clothing. Wen Yu said with a smile when she saw him looking at the clothes on the rack. "The clothes that Pinru and I designed for young master have been specially tailored," Yi Zichen said. "It's time to change seasons now, so I asked Listen to collect many rare spiritual materials suitable for making spirit chi clothing. Pinru and I plan to help everyone prepare clothes for the end of the season before we set up Pinru's home. When the time comes, I'll simplify the clothes I've designed for everyone and save the precious spirit materials. Then, I'll be able to put them on the market." Upon hearing her words, Lin Yuan raised his eyebrows. It turned out that the clothes in his hands were all limited edition products of the Home of Pinru brand. After that, most of the clothes that the Home of Taste put into the market were modified from the clothes on the clothes racks. Lin Yuan could truly feel her and Lu Pinru's interest in setting up a clothing brand. Through her enthusiasm, Lin Yuan knew that establishing a clothing brand had always been what she wanted to do. It was just that the affairs of the manor and Sky City were complicated, and many things were handled by Wen Yu alone. Wen Yu had never had the time to cultivate her personal interests. Now that everything in Sky City was on the right track, Wen Yu had a lot of free time. In addition, Lu Pinru was talented in internal affairs, so she could be of great help to Wen Yu. This allowed Wen Yu to have time to manage the brand with Lu Pinru. Lin Yuan looked at Wen Yu, who had a smile on her face. If a clothing brand wants to become famous, the most important thing is to equate this clothing brand with luxury goods. Only when people treat the things you're selling as luxury goods and not ordinary clothes, the clothes you design and create will make everyone scramble for them. Wen Yu listened very carefully to Lin Yuan's words. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Wen Yu hurriedly said, "Pinru and I have decided to produce some custom-made clothes in addition to mass-producing ready-made clothes. These custom-made clothes will use many rare spirit materials and should be able to reach the standard of luxury goods." Upon hearing Wen Yu's words, Lin Yuan shook his head. There's an essential difference between spirit chi clothes and those luxury goods. As long as the luxury goods are valuable enough, there's no need to always change them in the mansion. But spirit chi clothes are different. The core members of the major factions are thinking about how to develop their faction all day long. If they want to develop their faction, they have to do diplomacy. During diplomacy, the major factions have extremely high pursuit and standards for spirit chi clothes. If you want to enhance the brand's prestige, the main target group has to be on these people. Chapter 983. Upon hearing his words, Wen Yu revealed a puzzled expression. He did not understand what Lin Yuan meant. Logically speaking, Gao Ding could completely satisfy these people's requests. At that moment, Wen Yu heard Lin Yuan speak again. In order to show their status, the members of the major forces usually don't wear the spirit chi clothes for a second time for a long time. They're even afraid that people will think that they're wearing too little clothes. Many members of top forces will never wear the clothes they wore at other social occasions after attending a banquet once. Therefore, no matter how luxurious the custom-made clothes are, they can only be worn once. It's very difficult to attract the members of the major forces to pay for them. Upon hearing his words, Wen Yu nodded thoughtfully. As a spirit attendant of the Radiant Moon Palace, Wen Yu had a deep understanding of the various major factions. He naturally knew what Lin Yuan was talking about. But Wen Yu couldn't think of any way to solve this situation. When Lin Yuan saw that Wen Yu still had a contemplative expression, he smiled slightly and said, "That's right. Wen Yu, do you know the concept of matching goods?" Wen Yu shook her head when she heard the term, distribution. She was sure that she had never heard of it before. Just as Wen Yu was thinking about what he meant, she heard Lin Yuan explain. If a brand wants to keep customers and make them buy more clothes of this brand, they need to keep attracting customers. It also allows customers to feel a sense of superiority in the process of spending money without feeling any heartache. If we're talking about designing a piece of clothing, this piece of clothing can only be distributed after Pinru's family has bought 10 pieces of haute couture clothing. Then, do you think the consumer will go to the store to buy 10 pieces of haute couture clothing when they want to buy the clothes that need to be matched? Upon hearing that, Wen Yu came to a sudden realization. He immediately knew what Lin Yuan was talking about when he mentioned the rationing. Before Wen Yu could think about how to design the spirit chi clothing for the distribution, she heard Lin Yuan say, "That's right. When the value of a piece of spirit chi clothing can fully reflect one's identity and is sufficiently precious. Even if you keep wearing this spirit chi clothing, it won't make people feel abrupt. Instead, they will only feel envious. The heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls are rare and expensive spiritual materials. They should be qualified to be used in the design of spirit chi clothing. The consumption of luxury goods has always been based on a sense of superiority. If you want to magnify this sense of superiority, you have to build a chain of contempt. One pearl contains the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearl of the dreamy cloud lake. The spirit chi clothing required to match it requires 10 custom-made dresses. A set of spirit chi clothing with heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls containing fixed floating life can be reserved for 100 high-order and 10 sets of dreamy cloud lake spiritual chi clothing. When it comes to the heavenly maiden-grade elemental pearls, 5-star weavers can design the color and details of the spirit chi clothing according to the customer's requirements, increasing the customer's sense of participation. Upon hearing that, Wen Yu's eyes lit up. He felt that it was because Lin Yuan hadn't thought of doing a clothing brand. If Lin Yuan had done so, he wouldn't have thought of doing it. Half of the clothes that the major factions people wore to attend banquets were probably ordered from him. At the same time, as someone who was good at allocating supplies, she knew very well that Lin Yuan would have such thoughts and cognition. It was because Lin Yuan had understood the human heart and human nature. Wen Yu hurriedly took out the notebook that she carried with her and started to write. Based on the concept of allocating goods that Lin Yuan had just mentioned, she sorted out the business ideas of the Home of Tastes. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan did not disturb her. He reached out and picked out a pure white spirit chi clothing with silver embroidery from the clothes rack that Wen Yu had just brought. Upon seeing this new batch of clothes that Wen Yu had made, Lin Yuan could find that her weaver ability had unknowingly greatly improved. The silver embroidery on it was made of the silk thread spat out by the diamond fae, the smooth silk silver silkworm. The silk thread spat out by the smooth silk silver silkworm was almost weightless. In a windless environment, the smooth silk silkworm's silk thread was so light that it could stay in the air for a minute. It was very difficult for ordinary Class 3 weavers to use such silk thread to embroider. Lin Yuan remembered that when Wen Yu had first made the spirit chi clothing for him, she had just broken through to Class 3 weaver. Right now, Wen Yu's weaver ability was at least advanced rank 3. Lin Yuan put on this pure white spirit chi clothing with silver embroidery and used his spiritual energy to communicate with Blackie. Blackie circled and came to Lin Yuan's window. Lin Yuan jumped down from the window and landed firmly on Blackie's back. Blackie immediately took Lin Yuan to Tongxi Street. The main street of Tongxi Street had the Spirit Food Pavilion and the Creation Master Association. The old alley behind the main street had row after row of shops of various colors. There were all kinds of stores, and there were naturally fays that were sold. Lin Yuan planned to choose the 100 Questions Beast from these shops. Lin Yuan might have announced his identity as the Moon Empress disciple at the Nix Assembly. However, news from the Nix Assembly, especially news involving the Moon Empress disciple, would not spread. Therefore, Lin Yuan did not have to worry that someone would recognize his identity as the Moon Empress disciple. However, Lin Yuan had been in the limelight at the All-Star competition, so he would often receive sidelong glances while riding on Blackie's back. Lin Yuan even encountered 2 female spirit chi professionals riding on flying type fays that wanted to stop him just to leave his contact information and get his signature. Such situations were common for the Radiance 100 sequence members and the members of the B and A guild clubs. However, Lin Yuan still found it hard to adapt. The flying type fays in the royal capital were definitely superior to the 36 major cities. However, it was still rare to see someone riding on a fantasy breed fae in the royal capital. Moreover, Lin Yuan was riding on a pure-blooded flood dragon fae. During the S tournament, Lin Yuan had only waved his hand to release a red light to win the duel. Many people were guessing what Lin Yuan's fae was. This flood dragon obviously could not release that red light, so it was definitely not the fae that Lin Yuan had used in the All-Star competition. This pure black flood dragon fae had become a fantasy breed at gold, so it was definitely not a flying type fae that was used as a mode of transportation. Instead, it was a fae that Lin Yuan had already contracted. Many passers-by used their cell phones to take pictures of Lin Yuan riding on Blackie. They were going to post it on his personal space on Star Web. This would allow his personal space to receive more attention and some likes. Chapter 984. When Lin Yuan arrived at the entrance of Tongxi Street, he asked Blackie to stop. When he landed on the ground with a flip, he discovered that there was a row of peddlers selling plum branches in flower boxes at the entrance of Tongxi Street. Plum branches could be used to make honey, sweet soup, flour cakes, and even spices. They were considered a very economical species among floral fays. However, most of the plum phase only bloomed in winter, and the plum flowers would wither in a few days when the weather turned warm. The plum branches could only be sold for 7 or 8 days. Therefore, the plum branches were being sold at an extremely cheap price, and all the hawkers were offering unimaginable discounts. In the past, the weather in the Xia region was hot all year round, and there were no plum branches to buy. Otherwise, even if Lin Yuan had to buy these plum branches when he was at his poorest, he wouldn't feel the slightest heartache. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard a boorish voice roaring. "Kid, if you continue to be like this, it won't be as simple as a scolding. We're all selling plum branches here. We've agreed on a price of 15 federal coins per branch. Everyone has bundles of plum branches that they haven't sold. Why are you lowering the price to 14 Federation dollars per branch?" Upon hearing this voice, Lin Yuan turned around and saw a tall and skinny man scolding a 12 or 13-year-old youth with an extremely dissatisfied tone. If the youth didn't have his head lowered and didn't say a word, the tall and skinny man would have given him a slap. Unlike the tall and skinny man's angry roar, the youth just lowered his head and pulled at a corner of his patched clothes while looking at the ground. He was trying hard not to cry. Upon seeing this scene, Lin Yuan frowned tightly. 6 or 7 years ago, when he was the same age as this youth, he had also sold usnias by the roadside. At that time, in order to raise money to treat Chu Si's high fever, he had changed the price of 1 usnia for 5 Federation dollars to 3 for 10. When he had just changed the price, he had immediately been educated by the other hawkers. It was exactly the same as the current youth. It couldn't be said that the tall and skinny man was completely wrong. Many of the peddlers sold plum branches at the same time. They earned their hard-earned money to feed their families. The youth's actions were equivalent to cutting off other people's source of income. A place where many hawkers gathered to sell a single spiritual ingredient would usually have their own rules. In order to maintain order, you need to ensure that everyone sells the phase at the same price. As for whether or not it could be sold, it all depended on one's own ability. 15 federal coins per plum branch was already very cheap. Under such circumstances, the young man still continued to lower the price. Clearly, he had a reason for wanting money. It could be said that for a youth of his age to come out and sell plum branches, he was already at his wit's end. Upon seeing this, Lin Yuan walked forward and looked at the helpless youth who had his head lowered and was tugging at the corner of his clothes. He gently squatted down. Just as Lin Yuan was about to reach out and rub the young man's hair, he found that the youth's eyes were already filled with a bean-sized teardrop that could fall at any time. Lin Yuan hurriedly took out a tissue and handed it to the youth. "A plum branch is 15 federal coins each, right? I want some more plum branches." When the young man saw that someone had suddenly comforted him and handed him a tissue, he wanted to reach out to take it. But when he saw the gold-plated print on the pure white paper towel, the young man quickly retracted his hand. This kind of gold-plated paper towel was made of real gold, and it was obvious that it was extremely expensive. When the young man looked at the paper towel, he felt that even if he sold all the plum branches in his flower basket, he wouldn't be able to afford this gold-plated paper towel. Upon seeing the young man's expression, Lin Yuan immediately picked up the paper towel and gently wiped the corner of the young man's eyes. The young man seemed to have never felt kindness from a stranger before. When a stranger suddenly treated him so well, he got nervous instead. He lifted his head and blinked his big, watery eyes while looking at Lin Yuan timidly. "Big brother, thank you. Big brother, how many plum branches do you want? Before I came out, my big brother had soaked them in ice water. They are all very fresh, and they can be kept for at least 2 days at home." When Lin Yuan heard the young man's timid promotion, he lowered his head and looked at the plum branches in the young man's flower basket. He noticed that the plum branches in the flower basket were very beautiful and stiff. Occasionally, there would be a few plum petals with water droplets. In order to achieve such a state, the plum branches would need to be soaked in ice water for at least 3 hours. At that moment, Lin Yuan heard a rough and warm voice beside his ear. "Young master, I also have plum branches here. Do you want to?" Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan raised his head and looked at the tall and thin man in front of him. "All right, I will take all of your plum branches. I can go back to make some plum blossom pancakes and plum blossom honey." The rough man's behavior might have made Lin Yuan frown, but under such circumstances, the rough man's behavior could be considered as good intentions. Otherwise, the rough man wouldn't have needed to say so much to the young man. He would just have to chase the young man out according to the rules of this area. In that case, the young man wouldn't be able to set up a stall here because he had broken the rules. It would more or less reduce the tall and thin man's competition. If the tall and thin man did that, the young man was destined to not earn a single cent today. During this season, as long as there was a day's delay, it was unknown how many plum branches would wither and wither. When the young man heard Lin Yuan's words, his face immediately revealed a joyful expression. However, he recalled that he had close to 300 plum branches in this flower basket. It doesn't cost so much to make flower cakes and plum blossom honey. The teenager said timidly. "Big brother, if you're only making plum blossom honey, you shouldn't need so many plum branches. If Big brother lives nearby, you can give me an address. Every morning, I can cut fresh plum branches and send them to Big brother." Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan rubbed the youth's hair and stood up. "Big brother, there are many people at home. These plum branches won't be wasted." After speaking, Lin Yuan gave the youth an address. The address was the Fey Observer Guild, which wasn't far from here. After handing over the address to the youth, Lin Yuan immediately said, "That's right. If there are more plum branches in the next few days, as long as you can carry them, send 500 to this address before 9 o'clock every morning. When the time comes, an auntie will take the plum branches from you and give you money." After saying that, Lin Yuan took out the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box that had not been used for a long time and paid the tall, thin man and the youth. He also paid the youth the price of 500 caddies of plum branches tomorrow morning. Just by seeing that the youth was selling the plum branches that he had painstakingly planted at such a low price, Lin Yuan knew that the youth had some unspeakable difficulties. Chapter 985. Help the needy, not the needy. According to the current weather and temperature, the plum branches should be able to be sold for another week or so. According to the price of 15 Federation dollars each, almost 5,000 plum branches could be sold for around 75,000 Federation dollars. He hoped that 75,000 Federation dollars would be able to help this 12 or 13-year-old youth in front of him. The youth took the Federation dollars from Lin Yuan, and his eyes, which were a little dusty due to the pressure of life, immediately flashed with a clear light. The youth's somewhat cracked lips quietly curved up, and he said with hope and surprise, "Big brother finally doesn't have to suffer this month. Brother, you don't have to suffer anymore this month. You can finally drink medicine once every 2 days." Previously, Lin Yuan had heard this youth mention that he had an older brother who would use ice water to soak the plum branches. Lin Yuan was also an older brother, and Lin Yuan had thought that as an older brother, how could he let his younger brother go out to sell plum branches? He didn't expect this youth to sell plum branches to treat his older brother's illness. The youth took the money and carried the empty flower basket on his back. He quickly ran toward the alley of Shitong Street, and his entire body was filled with youthful vitality. The tall and skinny man had been observing Lin Yuan ever since he arrived. Just by looking at the silver-embroidered crane shadow and mist on Lin Yuan's spirit chi clothes, as well as the gold-stamped paper towel that he had just handed over. The tall and skinny man knew that Lin Yuan's identity was definitely not ordinary, and he wasn't even on the same level as people like him. However, the tall and skinny man couldn't tell exactly what level Lin Yuan was at. The tall and skinny man had been selling spiritual ingredients on Shitong Street for a living, and he had seen many young masters from wealthy families. Among them, there were even young masters from rising factions. However, compared to those young masters from wealthy families, Lin Yuan gave the tall and skinny man a completely different feeling. His noble aura carried calmness, and the curve of his mouth would involuntarily make people feel intimate. When the tall and skinny man saw Lin Yuan's gaze looking in the direction that the youth left, he hurriedly said, "Ah Yu's older brother contracted a strange disease last summer. Yu's brother contracted a strange disease last summer. 2 years ago, the parents of the two children met a forest dire wolf when they went to the endless forest to dig for black-shelled vegetables. If the old couple knew that they would die in the mouth of the forest dire wolf, they definitely wouldn't have chosen to adopt these two children. After Lon contracted a strange disease, he can't be seen at all. Only Yu is supporting them. I reckon that their Fey store won't be able to operate for much longer. Just as the rugged man finished sighing, he realized that the noble-looking young man who had been standing beside him had already left. Lin Yuan walked toward the alley that the youth had just run into. Tongxi Street could be considered an old street in the royal capital. There were many old alleys on Tongxi Street that had existed for hundreds of years. These old alleys were all single-room houses with front and backyards. At this time, every small house in the old alley was usually a shop. The small houses, which were also the shops, were close to each other, and it was filled with a very lively atmosphere. As soon as he turned into the alley, he saw a few large steamers in front of a small house's courtyard. There was a charcoal fire in the steamer, and steam rose from the steamer, bringing with it the smell of barbecued black-back mountain boar. When he smelled this scent, he felt a little hungry. He wanted to immediately go forward and buy some barbecued pork to eat. However, when Lin Yuan thought about going to the Spirit Food Pavilion for a meal with Tian Ningning, he gave up on the idea of buying barbecued black-back mountain boar. The path in the alley wasn't as easy to walk as the main path of Tongxi Street. If one were to run quickly on the path in the alley, the gravel path in the alley would definitely bring up dust. However, when walking on such a path, Lin Yuan felt his heart was familiar and steady. When Lin Yuan had taken out the Federation dollars from the amber button-shaped diamond face storage box, he felt a little enlightened. In Lin Yuan's memory, he had used Radiance dollars to purchase things for a long time. It had been a long time since he had used Federation dollars. Today, when he came to the old alley, he had suddenly stepped into the mortal world from the fairyland-like return from faraway mansion. The mountains and rivers were vast, and the mortal world was filled with smoke and fire. The hustle and bustle in his ears and the smoke and fire in front of him made Lin Yuan feel that formless things were the most free. Just as Lin Yuan was having this realization, his spiritual energy suddenly shook. A willpower rune that was formed by the constantly changing air currents appeared in Lin Yuan's mind. Lin Yuan didn't expect that he would actually comprehend another willpower rune unknowingly. Lin Yuan now had 2 willpower runes in his mind that he hadn't had time to use yet. One of them was the willpower rune that Lin Yuan had comprehended from the extreme massacre. This willpower rune was the first willpower rune that Lin Yuan had comprehended, and it had been gathering dust in his mind for a long time. The other willpower rune was this one. It was formless and filled with the aura of freedom. Lin Yuan still didn't have a clue as to what phase were suitable for the 2 idle willpower runes in his mind. As a spirit chi professional, Lin Yuan couldn't casually contract a Fey just to use the willpower rune. After each different Fey was contracted, it had to be able to perfect Lin Yuan's combat system. Lin Yuan felt that when he was free, he should properly think about what kind of phase his combat system was still lacking to make up for it. After returning to his senses from the realization, Lin Yuan couldn't help but recall what the rough, tall, and thin man had just said. When Lin Yuan saw that 12 or 13 years old youth called Yu selling spiritual ingredients outside, he thought of himself. Lin Yuan was indeed moved by compassion, but he didn't expect that this youth and his elder brother's situation would be so similar to his and Chu Si's. It was because the elder brother had a problem with his body and opened a Fey store. His parents were also dead. However, he and Chu Si were different from this pair of brothers in that they were indeed born from the wombs of their parents. However, this pair of brothers were adopted. Lin Yuan found it hard to imagine that the circumstances of different people would actually almost faintly overlap. At the same time, a trace of doubt arose in Lin Yuan's heart. The rough man said that Ayu's elder brother had a strange illness that couldn't be seen in public. This illness was really too strange. In the era of the Spirit Chi awakening, it sounded a little sad that ordinary people couldn't become Spirit Chi professionals. However, these ordinary people were also lucky. In the era of the spirit qi awakening, ordinary people could breathe spirit qi and eat spiritual ingredients that contained spiritual power. As long as they didn't have some serious illness, it was very difficult for them to lose their lives. At the same time, after the spirit qi awakening, many strange illnesses before the spirit qi awakening had disappeared. The first one was even worse. End of this chapter. Chapter 986. Speaking of photophobia, many of the severely injured or newly born dark-type fays were very sensitive to light. This sensitivity wasn't reflected in the photophobia. Instead, purebred dark-type fays would be quickly scorched by the intense sunlight, resulting in injuries. Due to prolonged exposure to sunlight, their roots would be damaged. Only when purebred dark-type fays matured to a certain extent would they be able to fearlessly expose themselves to sunlight. However, even if purebred dark-type fays could be exposed to sunlight, they would still have a strong aversion to being exposed to sunlight. Lin Yuan shook his head and quickly tossed this absurd thought out of his mind. How could a human be a purebred dark-type fae? A purebred dark-type fae would need to reach Myth 2 to transform into a human form. Even if a Myth 2 fae was on the verge of death, it wouldn't be afraid of sunlight. When the first fae store appeared in the alley, Lin Yuan summoned Genius and said, "Genius, you can choose your students later." After hearing Lin Yuan's words, Genius happily swayed its 5 fluffy tails and brushed against Lin Yuan's arm. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Genius happily swayed its 5 fluffy tails. Its tails brushed against Lin Yuan's arm as it spoke in a childish voice. Lin Yuan, Genius doesn't have any requirements for its students. Compared to the 100 Questions beasts with perfect bodies, Genius is more interested in accepting the 100 Questions beasts with flaws as its students. Those 100 Questions beasts with perfect bodies would be able to find their masters quickly. However, those with flaws wouldn't have a chance to find their masters. Genius then added softly, they wouldn't even have food to eat. Genius clearly recalled its experience before meeting Lin Yuan. After recalling that experience, Genius immediately scuttled from Lin Yuan's embrace to Lin Yuan's shoulder. After recalling that experience, Genius immediately scuttled from Lin Yuan's embrace and onto Lin Yuan's shoulder. It used its snow-white face to rub against Lin Yuan's cheek and meowed. Lin Yuan frowned as soon as he walked into the courtyard in front of him. This pungent smell was like the smell of feces piled up and fermented after a long period of time. When Genius smelled this smell, it twitched its nose and whispered into Lin Yuan's ear. "Lin Yuan, Genius doesn't smell any 100 Questions beasts here. There shouldn't be any 100 Questions beasts for sale here. There shouldn't be any 100 Questions beasts for sale here." When Lin Yuan heard Genius' words, he stopped in his tracks. At this moment, an uncle walked out of the shop. The uncle was holding a gunny sack in disgust. Dark brown liquid dripped from the sack onto the ground from time to time. When the burly man came out with the sack, Lin Yuan's nose was filled with the smell of feces. Lin Yuan knew that this burly man should have just cleaned up the fae's excrement in the store at noon. When Lin Yuan had opened the fae store, apart from Genius and Chimey, he had only raised plant species faes. There weren't any animal faes for sale. Animal species faes were far more expensive than plant species faes. The reason Lin Yuan didn't sell animal faes was because his body didn't allow it at that time. He couldn't do the complicated work every day to serve those animal species faes. On the other hand, it was also because he was very nostalgic. After raising an animal species fae for a long time, he would always feel reluctant to sell it. If he sold such ordinary fays, he would not be able to ensure that they would have a good home. When the burly man saw Lin Yuan, he quickly took a few steps forward and placed the bag in the corner. He then walked in front of Lin Yuan and took a quick look at Lin Yuan's attire. There was also a white, blue-eyed kitten with 5 fluffy tails on its shoulder and no strand of hair on its body. "Handsome brother, I wonder what kind of fae you are looking for in the store. My store has a complete range of fays. If my store dares to say that it is number 2 in the entire old alley, no other store dares to say that it is number 1. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan replied, "I would like a few 100 Questions beasts." When he heard Lin Yuan's reply, the uncle's expression immediately turned awkward. The uncle looked at Lin Yuan with a strange expression and didn't understand why Lin Yuan wanted so many 100 questions beasts. As a housekeeping beast, the 100 questions beast has the same intelligence as a normal person. It is considered the easiest fey to rear. However, the profit of a 100 questions beast was too low, so no one was willing to rear a 100 questions beast. Handsome brother, if you want to buy a 100 questions beast, my store doesn't have it. Other stores shouldn't have it either. The 100 questions beast can only be bought at the fey wholesale market. You can choose from tens of thousands of 100 questions beasts at the comprehension wholesale market. The uncle suddenly thought of something and said, there is a small fey store at the deepest part of the alley. There is also a small fey store at the end of the alley. It is now opened by a pair of brothers. There should be a 100 questions beast there. However, the 100 questions beasts inside shouldn't be in good condition. If handsome brother doesn't mind, you can go there to take a look. Lin Yuan nodded and replied, I don't have a high requirement for the 100 questions beast's condition. I don't have a high requirement for the 100 questions beast's appearance. When Lin Yuan said that he wanted to take a look, the uncle quickly said, it just so happens that my wife is in the store. It just so happens that my wife is in the shop right now. It's not easy to find the two brothers' shop. I'll send you there on the way. The two brothers' elder brother is suffering from a strange illness and is rather weak when speaking. However, there is definitely no problem with the items in that store. After hearing the uncle's words, Lin Yuan immediately knew that the store should be the one that the youth called Ah Yu was at. When the uncle heard that Lin Yuan wanted to buy a 100 questions beast, he eagerly wanted to pull Lin Yuan over. He was even more attentive than the store that sold his own fey. However, he also wanted to help the two brothers in the store. This made Lin Yuan involuntarily think of Auntie Zhang and Uncle Li who had taken care of him. In this world, there would be a bright sun and a shadow, but even in the shadow, there would still be warmth. The warm sun foundation that Chimey and Genius were planning to establish required Lin Yuan to operate. This warm sun foundation had yet to be officially implemented. With Lin Yuan's current ability, the implementation of the warm sun foundation could be simple or difficult. The key was to see how far Lin Yuan was planning to go. Lin Yuan felt that since he wanted to do it, he might as well do it big. The 3 billion radiance dollars that Chimey earned from the live streaming room might seem like a lot, but if he were to implement this warm sun foundation, if he were to distribute the 3 billion radiance dollars to every corner of the Radiance Federation's 32 major cities, it wouldn't be enough. This would require a lot of manpower. At the same time, he would have to open up the channels to the various fey breeding bases and merchant associations. The second would be even more. End of this chapter. Chapter 987. Among the people Lin Yuan knew, Sun Ningxiang controlled the top faction, Du Immortal Garden, and had the majority of plant fays in the market. As the young patriarch of the Coiled Dragon Valley, Long Tao controlled a huge market share of dragon species fays and creation master resources. Li Xian came from the Pinnacle faction, Li Cloud Bird Niche, which had a huge market share of flying-type fays. Gao Feng was born in the Gao family, a top-notch force. The Gao family vigorously developed deep-sea resources. It had a huge number of aquatic fays. Lin Yuan's current connections weren't enough to cover every fey in the market. However, if the Warm Sun Fund could borrow the power of these top forces, it would undoubtedly be much easier to implement the Warm Sun Fund. He planned to have a good talk with Sun Ningxiang, Gao Feng, Long Tao, Li Xian, and the others when he had the time. The uncle kept talking to Lin Yuan along the way. Lin Yuan was thinking about the Warm Sun Fund, but he basically answered all the uncle's questions. The uncle also recognized Lin Yuan as the youth who had defeated the Barbarian Snake Guild Club's Meng Su during the All-Star match. Along the way, they had never stopped praising Lin Yuan. Lin Yuan couldn't help but feel a little embarrassed. After sending Lin Yuan to the corner of the alley, the middle-aged man pointed forward and said, "Let's go. Turn inside and walk straight. You'll find that small shop. It's easy to find. I have to go back and clean up the trash in the shop. Otherwise, the old woman will say that I'm lazy when she finds that the shop is not cleaned up after cooking. Upon hearing that, Lin Yuan nodded with a pained expression. The uncle in front of him was indeed lazy, but he was also a good person. When Lin Yuan turned into the alley, he saw the youth named Yu, who had just sold him the plum branches, pouring a basin of water on him. He had also done such a thing before, but that was when the faucet in the bathroom had broken and could not be repaired in time. At that time, the weather in Redbud City was hot, and no matter how many water basins they used, they didn't have to worry about catching a cold. But at this time, the royal capital was still warm from the cold. Now that he was holding a basin of water over his body, he might catch a cold if a gust of wind blew. As expected, Yu, who was wiping his body with a towel, couldn't help but sneeze. At that moment, Yu also saw Lin Yuan. His eyes lit up, and he jogged to Lin Yuan's side. "Big brother, why are you here? Are you going to the store to buy something?" Just as Lin Yuan was about to nod, he heard a weak voice coming from the store. "Xiao Yu, the water basin in the house is missing. Did you take it out? I've already said that the weather hasn't warmed up yet. You'll catch a cold if you keep putting water basins on your body." This voice sounded very weak and lacking in energy. But this weak voice revealed a sense of concern. When Yu heard his brother's voice, he quickly hid the basin behind him with a smile and shouted into the house. "Brother, there's a customer in the store. It's the big brother who asked me to reserve plum branches today. I'll take the money to buy medicine for you first." Ha 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 ha. Brother's health was the most important. I just want big brother to drink the medicine every day, not every 2 days. I'm not going to school. I want to help my brother in the shop. With that, Yu jogged out of the alley. Lin Yuan walked into the store and saw a youth slightly younger than him wrapped in a black robe. Only one face could be seen. The youth's face was pale and had a sickly weakness. Even though his body was wrapped in a bulky robe, one could still see the youth's thinness. When the youth saw Lin Yuan, his gaze was a little complicated, with a hint of vigilance and gratitude. Lin Yuan understood the sickly youth's gaze very well. If someone had ordered so many usnea vines from him when he had brought Chu Ci to the Xia region to survive, Lin Yuan would have been vigilant. If that person had rushed to the store, Lin Yuan would have been vigilant. Such vigilance was a thorn that weak lifeforms had to erect in order to survive. While the youth was looking at Lin Yuan was also sizing him up. Under observation, Lin Yuan felt that the vitality in the youth's body seemed to be being absorbed by something or was brewing something. This was the reason for the youth's weakness. Apart from that, Lin Yuan could not find any other problems. Since it was the consumption of vitality that had caused the youth to be weak, then he would help the youth replenish the vitality. Lin Yuan waved his hand, and a green light shot toward the black-robed youth in front of him. When the black-robed youth saw the green light, he instinctively wanted to dodge. However, Lin Yuan's green light came too quickly, and the youth was too weak to dodge at all. The youth, who was hit by the green light beam, suddenly found that the weakness in his body was constantly disappearing, and his entire body was filled with strength. This feeling of strength was the same as 2 years ago before he had the strange illness. Such an unforeseen event immediately made the black-robed youth reveal a look of joy. Then, the vigilance in the youth's eyes completely disappeared, and he looked at Lin Yuan with gratitude. But at the same time, Lin Yuan's brows were tightly furrowed. The vitality released by the jasmine lily's bud of mountain jade was too much for the youth. Even if the youth was seriously injured and only had 1 breath left, this green vitality energy beam would quickly heal him. Then, the excessive vitality would quickly flow out of the youth's body. However, the youth's body was like a bottomless pit that greedily absorbed the pure vitality that Lin Yuan released. Lin Yuan quietly used Morbius True Data and found that there was pure dark energy surging and recovering in the youth's body. At the same time, Lin Yuan could confirm that the youth in front of him was indeed a human. It was Lin Yuan's first time encountering a normal human body that contained a huge amount of pure dark energy. This situation aroused Lin Yuan's curiosity. Previously, the pure dark energy in the youth's body had been in a dormant state, which allowed the youth to survive. Now that Lin Yuan had activated this dark energy, if he stopped the injection of vitality energy, the activated pure dark energy in the youth's body would quickly absorb the youth's existing vitality. The green vitality energy in Lin Yuan's hand continued for a full 5 minutes. Lin Yuan found that the pure dark energy in the black-robed youth's body was filled to the extreme, as though it was about to come to life and suddenly disappeared. Then, a layer of dark light suddenly ignited under the youth's black robe. This layer of dark light kept spreading up the youth's chest as though it was outlining a strange pattern. This pattern climbed up the youth's neck, and Lin Yuan found that a black pattern outlined the shape of a tail hook appeared on the left side of the youth's face. This tail hook looked a little like a scorpion's tail that was choosing a person to devour. Upon seeing this tail hook's shape, Lin Yuan suddenly widened his eyes, and a guess suddenly appeared in his mind. Then, Lin Yuan quickly walked forward and said to the youth, "Can I see what's on your neck?" The black-robed youth was unaware of the changes in his body and only felt that he was finally no longer weak. It just so happened that the black-robed youth wanted to test whether he was afraid of light or not. It just so happened that the black-robed youth wanted to test whether he was afraid of light or not. When the black-robed youth untied his black robe and took off his hat to reveal his neck, Lin Yuan immediately confirmed his guess in his heart. The pattern that appeared on the black-robed youth's body was a beast pattern. Chapter 3 Sad Face. End of this chapter. Chapter 988. The beast pattern was both familiar and unfamiliar to Lin Yuan. When Yu's sacred source life form, the Celestial Council, had only brought in 2 members. These 2 members were Bei Su and Yin Lin. Bei Su and Yin Lin had signed contracts with the Southern and Southern constellations. During the Celestial Stairway Council, Lin Yuan had learned that Yin Lin had awakened 2 beast patterns. Therefore, he had done a lot of research on them. Yin Lin had become the Azure Federation's 4th Radiance Envoy with the Lingyan White Lion and Azure Cloud Leopard beast patterns. Lin Yuan had heard this news from the Moon Empress at the Nyx Assembly, and he had been shocked when he first found out. The Radiance Federation, the Freedom Federation, and the Azure Federation were the 3 most powerful federations in the world. The 3 federations' strength was about the same. Any conflict between 2 federations would shake the entire continent. Yin Lin had become the 4th Azure Envoy and had an extremely noble status in the Azure Federation. Yin Lin had been 1 step ahead of Lin Yuan. The Azure Federation's 12 Class 5 families were the Azure Federation's pillars. In the past, Yin Lin's status in the Azure Federation was slightly inferior to Lin Yuan's status as the Moon Empress disciple. Now that Yin Lin had become the 4th Azure Envoy, her status was still obviously higher than Lin Yuan's. Only when Lin Yuan became a Radiance Envoy would he be on equal footing with Yin Lin. However, due to the Sacred Source Lifeform's relationship with the Celestial Council, Yin Lin was still Lin Yuan's subordinate even as the 4th Azure Envoy. He did not know if Yin Lin had developed a faction in the Azure Federation during this time. The 4th Celestial Council would be held tomorrow night. It had been almost a full month since Yin Lin and Bei Su had entered the Celestial Council and been rescued by Lin Yuan. Therefore, it was time for Lin Yuan to take stock of Yin Lin and Bei Su's gains at the next Celestial Council. At the same time, it was time to release the next phase of Yin Lin and Bei Su's mission. Lin Yuan was not worried about Yin Lin. Previously, Yin Lin's words and actions were supported by the Azure Federation's Class 5 and Class 4 families. Now that Yin Lin had become the 4th Azure Envoy, her words and actions were supported by the entire Azure Federation. With such an identity, Yin Lin could do whatever she wanted without any resistance. But not Bei Su. In a place like the Cave Continent's underground world, Bei Su could only rely on the sharp shadow nether bat that he and Lin Yuan had given him. Speaking of which, Lin Yuan had always had a guess as to why Yin Lin had immediately awakened 2 types of beast patterns after recovering from her blindness. Lin Yuan felt that Yin Lin had awakened 2 beast patterns because of his Jasmine Lily's disconnected exclusive skill. A human spirit chi professional's body was abnormally weak, and the bloodline of a high-grade Fae would cause pressure on the human body. in order to prevent death due to excessive pressure of the bloodline. The high-rank spirit beast bloodline in a human's body would normally be severed from its genetic model when it was young, and it would enter a dormant state. When he had healed Yin Lin's eyes, he had been afraid that they would not heal completely. Thus, he simply injected a huge amount of life energy into Yin Lin. It was very likely that the vitality energy with the exclusive skill, severed connection, allowed Yin Lin's genetic model to merge with the spirit beast bloodline in her body. That was how he awakened the beast mark. Now that he saw Alan's situation, Lin Yuan was certain that his guess was correct. Lin Yuan could not help but be a little speechless. He had comprehended the willpower rune from the Green Mountain that had been burned by the fire and then restored by nature's baptism. It had fused with a very ordinary fae like the jasmine lily. It was truly a perfect decision to promote the jasmine lily into a fantasy breed. There were so many healing-type spirit chi professionals in the Radiance Federation. Even the Emperor-class healing-type spirit chi professionals had many healing abilities that Lin Yuan could not compare with. However, Lin Yuan really did not find any healing-type spirit chi professionals contracted phase that had the Jasmine Lily's exclusive skill, severed connection. When Alan saw Lin Yuan's eyes staring at his neck, he felt that Lin Yuan's gaze was a little hot. This made Alan feel a little strange as he did not understand what was there to look at on his neck. When Alan lowered his head, he saw the beast pattern that extended from his neck all the way down to his chest. Alan immediately panicked, not understanding how such an inexplicable thing had appeared on his body. When Lin Yuan saw Alan's panicked expression, he explained, "Don't be afraid. This is the wealth that your biological parents left for you in their bloodline. The black pattern that appeared on your neck is a beast pattern. It looks like a purebred dark-type scorpion fae. If you contract a purebred dark-type scorpion fae in the future, this scorpion fae will evolve rapidly through the guidance of your bloodline. At the same time, the speed of increasing strength will be several times faster than when others nurture faes." Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Alan's pupils contracted. You did not know that he was not his biological parents, but Alan was very clear about it. Even though his adoptive parents had never personally told him, everyone in this small alley was neighbors. Almost everyone in the alley knew that something had happened to someone's family. When Alan's adoptive parents were still alive, he had heard his neighbors mentioning his background behind his back more than once. At first, Alan did not believe it, but as he grew older, he realized that the older he and you grew, the more different they looked from their adoptive parents. As a youth that was only 16 or 17 years old, Alan did not know why he and his younger brother, Yu, had been abandoned. Alan knew nothing about why he and his younger brother, Yu, had been abandoned. It was impossible for Alan to seek confirmation from his adoptive parents. Even if Alan wanted to seek confirmation, his adoptive parents had already died in the mouth of the forest dire wolf. When facing his adoptive parents, Alan would be as filial as his biological parents. When his adoptive parents were still alive, Alan had fulfilled his duty as a child. Although Alan had never expressed his feelings toward his biological parents, he had some resentment in his heart. As a child, he would always want to ask why his parents had abandoned him when he was born. At that moment, Alan's face revealed a trace of loneliness and pain. However, Alan quickly sorted out his emotions and asked Lin Yuan with a trembling voice, "How do you know that this beast pattern was left behind by my biological parents?" After hearing what this noble youth had said, it was obvious that he knew what the beast pattern on his body was. Based on what the noble young man had just said, it was obvious that he knew what the beast mark on his body was. Even if this bit of information was not enough to dispel the doubts in his heart, Alan still wanted to know more about his biological parents. Even if this bit of information was not enough to dispel the doubts in his heart. First, more. End of this chapter. Chapter 989. Upon hearing Aaron's words, Lin Yuan knew that Aaron simply did not know what the beast pattern on his body was. That's right. Things like beast tattoos belong to the knowledge of 4-star scholars. It was impossible for a youth like Alan, who had been helping his younger brother to maintain the Fae store, to survive, to have heard of it. Lin Yuan explained. Your biological parents are either your father or mother. At the very least, they are creation breed phase. This is because only the children of creation breed phase and humans can have beast patterns. Just as I said, according to your beast pattern, one of your biological parents' original body is this purebred dark element scorpion fae. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, Alan felt as though his worldview had been overturned. Alan had lived for 16 or 17 years, but he had never thought that he would be the child of a fae. But what exactly was a creation seed? Is it even more powerful than the faes in my imagination? Upon seeing Aaron's shocked and doubtful expression, Lin Yuan knew that Aaron was abnormally surprised by what he had said. At the same time, there were some things that Alan did not understand. Lin Yuan's thoughts turned, and he immediately figured out the key to it. When he had been in Redbud City's Xia region, he had only heard of fantasy breed faes. In his understanding, fantasy breed faes were already the strongest existences. The Redbud City Lordess, Ling Xiao, was the one who explained the fantasy breed fae's quality to Fantasy V while riding on the Blue Jade Pegasus. At that time, he had just learned that there were myth breeds above fantasy breed faes. Lin Yuan explained to Alan. When an ordinary fae fuses with a willpower rune that represents the will of all beings in the world, it will become a fantasy breed fae. When this willpower surpasses everything in the world and condenses into a law, a fantasy breed fae will transform into a myth breed fae. When this law that is above everything in the world evolves into a world from within, a myth breed fae will transform into a creation breed fae. Lin Yuan recalled the painful expression on Alan's face, and his heart stirred. It isn't easy for a fantasy breed fae to give birth to a child. The hardships they have to go through aren't something that ordinary people can imagine. Therefore, since your parents gave birth to you, they would not casually abandon you. They must have abandoned you because they also have a thorny problem that they can't solve. You and you are biological brothers. You are 4 to 5 years older than you, so you should be able to remember things at that age. But you don't have the slightest impression of your biological parents. This means that your biological parents don't want you to be sad because of their departure. They should love you more than they think. After saying that, Lin Yuan pointed at the beast pattern at the end of Alan's scorpion tail. Based on the appearance and tail characteristics of the pure-blooded dark species scorpion fae on the beast pattern, it's likely to be the extreme night jade sky scorpion. A scorpion fae like the extreme night jade scorpion is one of the few scorpion faes that will keep it by its side for nurturing even after it matures. Upon hearing Lin Yuan's words, the confusion and doubts in Alan's heart instantly turned into tears. Tears welled in her eyes. There were very few people like Lan who knew he was adopted from a young age and kept it a secret. The feeling of suddenly undoing the knot in his heart was very carefree. At the same time, it made him miss, grieve, and reminisce even more. However, the corners of Alan's mouth curled up slightly as he shed tears. This curl was Alan's heart jumping with joy at the fact that he had once been loved by his biological parents. Alan quickly stretched out his sleeves and wiped his face forcefully. He bowed and thanked Lin Yuan. Young master, my name is Qin Luan. Thank you for everything you have done for me. I don't know how I can repay you. If there is, please let me know. I will do anything for you. Also, can I beg you to help take a look at Yu in a while? Yu has also been faintly afraid of light since this month, but the symptoms are very mild. However, my symptoms had also evolved over half a year to the extent that I can't even see the light now. From the moment Lin Yuan entered the store, he had been observing the surrounding environment. The interior of the store might not be big, but it was very tidy. This meant that this youth called Qin Luan was still taking care of the store seriously despite his frail body. Lin Yuan did not say whether he should help Yu or not. Instead, he asked Qin Luan. Do you have any plans after this? You might not be able to buy a pure dark attribute scorpion fae even if you save for 5 years to open this fae store. Even if you are lucky enough to obtain a pure dark element scorpion fae before the age of 25, its quality will only be able to reach elite. The store's resources are all invested in you. You will definitely be mediocre when he grows up. For spirit chi professionals like you who have awakened beast patterns, your contracted phase can only be suitable for phase of the same attribute and type as the beast pattern fae. Any other phase will be rejected. Furthermore, you have the extreme Night Jade Scorpion's beast pattern on your neck. It's the most suitable fae to form a contract with. A rare fae like the extreme Night Jade Scorpion can only be found in a top faction's Brahma insect cage. Are you willing to not form a contract with an extreme Night Jade Sky Scorpion that is compatible with the beast marks? Lin Yuan had said such words because he fancied Qin Luan's talent. On the other hand, when he saw Qin Luan and Qin Yu, he would think of himself and Chu Ci. Back when he had just obtained Morbius, he had become the Moon Empress disciple. The Moon Empress had always been standing in front of him and silently shielded him. Only then did he have the opportunity to grow rapidly. Now that Qin Luan had the extreme Night Jade Sky Scorpion's beast pattern, it was the same as obtaining a new life. If Qin Luan was willing to join Sky City, he could also stand in front of Qin Luan and shield him. When Qin Luan heard his words, he suddenly clenched his fists tightly. "I'm not willing." After gritting his teeth and saying the words "I'm not willing," Qin Luan's clenched fists weakly released. "So what if I'm not willing? Apart from this dilapidated face store, I have nothing. I can't even become a spirit chi professional and form a contract with a fae that I can." Just as Qin Luan suddenly felt that there was no direction ahead, he heard the noble youth standing in front of him say, "I have a private faction that has just been established and hasn't had time to develop. I have a private force that has just been established and hasn't had the time to develop. It's called Sky City. Are you willing to join Sky City? Become a member of Sky City?" The second part was even worse. End of this chapter. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.